Settle up, settle up, settle up, settle up. How you doing out there? Let me say welcome and hetty poo to the People's Talk Show. It's Heru here, and I know. But you gotta forgive me because everything is everything, and I'm here alongside myself to share ideas and concepts with you and have a lovely day with you on the People's Talk Show. And I hope that everything is cushy, everything is well for you. I hope that everything is in order and you're realizing your goals and your dreams. It's the People's Talk Show alongside Heru hosting you this afternoon. This lovely, lovely afternoon. Not too hot, not too cold. You know, some like it hot, some like it cold. Okay, so hang on a sec. Let me say, rise up to management, technicians, and all of those that go in to make up the formidable team we have down here in the Genesis neck of the woods. How you doing? I hope everything is cushy, as I said before. And I hope you're probably enjoying your dinner right now. You know, rice and peas as usual, or maybe not. Maybe some people might be eating Kentucky or wherever. You know, everyone's entitled to their own things. I'll be with you in just 1 minute, folks. Okay, ready to roll. And so, as I said, it's a privilege and pleasure for me to be here with you. It's been a while, I know, but I've been really busy. I've been so busy. Couldn't even find my own self, but, you know, things go that way. You have to keep busy, because if you don't, you know what the saying says? The devil finds work for idle hands. And I know I don't want to be used by no devil, to pardon the expression, but we're here to share ideas and, you know, really all we can really have is just opinions at the moment, until we find a way where we can be as up there and as important as other groups. And the thing, you know, and first of all, before I go, let me rise up all of the presenters, the talk show presenters, the music presenters, you know, because they do hard work here, and I know it's voluntary work. They don't get paid for it, but, you know, they volunteer their time and their efforts ceasingly to make sure that we have this platform to express ourselves and share the ways and, you know, where we may be able to leverage some of the community's skills, and, you know, and because I don't feel that the community, especially the black community, I don't think they look at their positions, or we know their positions, or what do you think about the community's position today, or where the community is at. I don't know if there's any consensus on this. I don't know if there's ever a consensus on where we are in the scheme of things. You may have different ideas. I think people differ, different opinions and different ideas about our position if they're thinking about it. So I started to ponder on it, and I said, I'm going to have a think about this. And I thought, and I said, where should I start? So I thought that I'd start at the beginning. The best place to start, you know. And I thought that I have to include the years that I have been here in my bag of tricks. That if I was going to talk to you, I'd have talk coming from the sphere of experience. And I'm moving up in categories, you know. Now I'm an elder, would you believe it? I can't get used to that term. Have grandchildren, and potentially a great grandfather, you know. So I'm coming up in age, you know, and all I can really do is look back at the experience that I have, you know, and especially if your experience is in one country. And, you know, and I spend most of my time, if not all of my time, most of my time here in the UK. And so, at least you can say that if you're going to get any experience or any opinions, you would be getting it from a very informed point of view. Not from an emotional standpoint, or maybe even from a resistive standpoint. You know what I mean? Where the position is hostile, and you get an emotional view rather than a informed and collective view. And so, I thought I'd start somewhere, and I start there, and I'm thinking back at the way things have progressed from my younger days in school, primary school to secondary school. And funny enough, all this and. Look and see, but I'm at pains to find out where I can go and get information coming from the community itself and its position. There's no consensus on how we feel about ourselves. All we know, there's over 1 point something million black people here in the UK, and it's at that 1 point. It's not very much people when you think about it. So we're not here as a majority at 1 point something million. And of that 1 point something million, it's hard to find out the heartbeat of the group. I'm trying to understand why the community, where is the community gone? And I want to know, what does the community feel about themselves, if they feel about themselves at all? These are the things that kind of bother me a bit, So I'm trying to find out where this community lies, where is it? Where is it? It's there. But when you calculate things, when you try to find some sort of a correlation, with to other members of the black group, and I suppose the black group would comprise Africans and, other Caribbeans and so forth, but it's still a black group. And so we look where we link to, the collective consciousness is just not there in the group, you see. But when you look at other groups like the Indians and the Chinese, there's a collective consciousness there. Well, it seems to be, because they seem to move collectively. You go to an Indian shop and you don't get Europeans serving in an Indian shop. You don't get black people ever will come to you and serve you in an Indian shop. Well, you won't get Indians coming in a restaurant, a Caribbean restaurant, and serving them there neither. You hard to get Chinese on those levels. I mean, every ethnicity, you will find that when it comes down to things like restaurants and all that, in some cases, but the one in Brixton used to be like you got every other race in there serving West Indian food. And that kind of make me think, oh, what's going on here? You won't find us in any of the other shops and restaurants, but you will. The one in the shop in Brixton, on a corner there, and you usually find all sorts of races behind. It's like you can sit in and eat, and it's like you can find all other races serving you. At one point, it was a mixture thing, you know what I mean? But it just didn't go down well, though. But now you've got another one in Brixton Road there. That's like a makeup of, they serve Caribbean food. I forgot what it's called, Caribbean something. But it's not really Caribbean people's. So they decided that they're going to sell our food their way, And since we don't want it, they're going to come and enterprise it, and they're going to sell it, and they're going to call it whatever they call it. But behind them, it's not the real. I don't know if there's a West Indian chefs that fall in behind them, but it's not really a West Indian owned or Jamaican owned or Caribbean owned thing. Some other group is. I wonder why that is. Do they look at us? I mean, we often hear that we shouldn't even care when people think about us, but I don't agree with that at all. What I think is that you should care on what people think about you. And so since I don't know, I think I always talk about this on my show. I keep saying that it's just influence that we keep having. We're being influenced 24/7, and there's nothing wrong with being influenced. Every groups, humans meet, and they influence each other. Various cultures meet, and there's not just one isolated culture. This is the kind of mindset I feel that some of the diasporans here in the UK, in the London southeast side of things, Peckham to be exact, are trying to move towards, or they're alluding to that position at least, to make you think that we ought to be fragmented and separated, isolated, and there's this feeling. So I'm trying to wonder why, when we look into our community, the black community, that we're that kind of, I understand we're not the bottom, and we have £300 billion spending power, so we can't say we don't have any money because we spend £300 billion a year on other people's things. So there is that. So what is it with the community? Are we listening to so much different voices? You know what I mean? But I decided to look and see whether I can pinpoint or locate the bulk of the black group. Because the bulk of the black group don't seem to be speaking as much as some little noise I hear coming from some little fringe groups that, you've got some animals, right, in the animal world that would, in order to escape the predators, they would blow themselves up as big and look as huge, and that sometimes works. You know what I mean? That kind of reminds me of certain little groups that appear in our community, and if you're not careful, you'll be influenced by them as well. And they will blow themselves up to look really big when they're not really big, because you hear them and you think the issue is big, but they are not really big. And after such a long time in blowing themselves up, they've never actually got big, and they're not big. They're not big at all, In actual fact, they're very minuscule. So if I was looking for something to represent the black group, then they would not be the group for me to go and look at and say, well, and measure the temperature of the collective consciousness since it's been hidden and not been laid threadbare. That group, the Back to Africa group, could not represent the black community. Their views are not the views of the black community at large, and I've proven that. But so I want to know, why doesn't the black community in its majority ever find itself? And the day that the black community, the black majority, decides to do something about this and to present themselves, rather than leave it to some of these little, we call despotism, or individual despotism that we are subjected to today. You know what I mean? But we're not really subjected to it, because no one telling us we switch on a radio and we can switch it off. You know what I mean? That we can't, when to do that and when not to do that. No one tells us that. So we're not really subjected to this minority view on our position. And only a handful, which is then proof. I saw it was only a handful that were talking about going back to Africa. They were talking all this black talk, this and that and the other, and getting their rocks off on it. They ain't doing nothing, but they always claim that they're doing. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing. Patting themselves on the back. So that couldn't represent, if I was looking for some silver thread within the community to say, well, this is representative of our black group, well, that group would never qualify. So don't worry about it. You're not missing anything. You see what I'm saying? You're not missing nothing. You just repetition. Remember the animal I spoke about that wants to blow itself up big in order to escape its predators? It's the same thing happening here. I just realized, because I wanted to know, where is the mind of the majority of the blacks? Surely they can come forward and say what is and what isn't. So they're leaving up to these little despotism groups that, been going on for the last 40 odd years and they don't even have any money. And I looked at this and sees that this is where I can see that the black group turns in on itself. So I thought I'd ask you to give your opinion on where the mind of the majority of blacks are. Do you know where it is? I'll tell you the truth. If I had some kind of method where I can begin to coax them to come together or try to form a consensus on our need to be to partake in society, I think I have an opinion on that, where the majority of the collective consciousness of the black group is. It's not in the diaspora and back to Africa group. No way. So I try to find it. Are they busy trying to make a life in society? That's why I have to ask the $1 million question: is life about liberation, or the black struggle, or trying to live in a society? Those, well, I think you can give it to two categories: black liberation struggle, or just life living in a society, trying to make ends meet, and also trying to make to compete then for the resources. Compete effectively. It's all right competing, but if you're not competing effectively, then what's the point? And I think this is the thing that's been having us down for the longest of time. So I'm looking reasons, I'm looking the whys and the wherefores of us being like this. Why is the majority of the blacks so quiet? You know what I mean? All we hear from is a little noise coming from the little fringe groups that we got masquerading themselves as something big and important when they're nothing. They don't even have any money. How much are they worth? And why I say that is because they are the self-same one that's going to drain our economy. You see? They are the self-same ones that are going to drain our economy. They are the self-same ones that's going to turn around and suck the lifeblood out of our economy. Because that group is poised. All right? That's poised to, take the money. Remember, our money's not going around, not even once in our community. So we know there's something wrong there. And we want to say, well, if the money's not going around once in our community, where's it going? I mean, we know that we're spending with other people. Fine. It's not a problem. All we'd have to do then is try and find some way to divert the money back into our group and allow it to circulate more than once. But the thing about that is there's a hole somewhere. You know what the hole is? Those little fringe groups, right? That will then turn in on us. What I mean is, like, if you know what is your life is about, if you think, and I think it's the reason why we can't really pinpoint where the majority of the blacks are, because they're not going to make any noise about what they're doing. They'll just get on with it. And I think that's where the majority of the black groups are. Just getting on with it. They don't see life like those little fringe groups out there, talking a lot of noise about going back to Africa and all them kind of thing, them black and this. Is that what life is about? That's why I asked the question. Is life about the black struggle? Is the black community have got a different struggle than any other as group? Because that's the way it's coming over to me. It looks like our struggle is special, brethren. And we're not really struggling for the resources of society. We're not really competing. That's not our problem. That's what we think. But I think that is our problem. Our problem is not the black struggle. Why are we thinking then every minute we're going to be struggling? That's what... And I think there's a little underhand play, these little fringe groups are trying to push in our face this kind of idea that we're in a struggle. So I want to hear from you. Do you think that we're in a struggle? We are in a black struggle, or we're in a struggle to compete in society for the resources? But you can see this two ways, you know. You can see it the way that the diaspora here in the UK, South in London, south side of things, Peckham to be exact, that you are in a struggle, you're in a war. They're telling you, but it looks like the majority don't listen to them. That's why I'm so glad that the majority are not stupid. So I'm looking for this majority. I don't want to join some little fringe minority groups, don't have any money, and are going to blood suck us, our communities out. I'm appealing to the majority who are just trying to get on with it. Listen to what we say. Look, listen to what I'm saying. You know, and I know that the majority of the blacks ignore that kind of a thrust. I mean, we do a Genesis. You know, we don't want to talk about Africa anyway. We don't always talk about Africa, 24/7, Africa, everything, Africa. Don't they know any other word to come out of their mouth? Have they got any other vocabulary? You know, why is Africa such a buzzword for these people and not the majority? The same, if I looked at it globally over the Afro-Americans, same thing. Caribbeans, same thing. This minority view, it's not even really holding us down. Because we're not held down. The picture that's been painted by these little fringe groups that we are held down and that we are in a war, it is because they want to live that reality. You see? The trouble is, they're not just living it from themselves. And if we look at it as a whole, you know, all they need to do now is have a charity box put up there for Back to Africa. Charity box. You see what I'm saying? So everybody can give some money, you know. So just join in this, they're just another charity group, really, and activist group. But activism for the wrong thing. So this idea of us in this black struggle, is it though? Or is it just a struggle for and competing with other groups in these borders for the meager resources of our society? Shouldn't we be clued up on that? You see? But on a whole, that is happening. But sometimes we pay attention to the little weak and impotent voices that's going on out there with the silly little stupid ideas that they come up every now and again to try to distract us. So you're hard pressed to find a doorway into the majority blacks. Ha ha. That's where I want to be. I want to be in a little fringe group. I'm tired of fringe groups now. Did the guy even muster up 150 quid? But you hear the big noise. You hear the big noise all the time. Yap, 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 yap. You see what I'm saying to you? For 40 odd years, so we definitely know that can't work, brethren. We definitely know that. That whatever idea that they have, it's not working. So we need to be hitting our head against a brick wall now, do we? Or do we? So what is it for you out there? Is it a black struggle? You know, black and white, racism, white man, da-da-da. And remember, you know, just 500 years ago, brethren, if we're still stuck into something 500 years ago and we're still on the same tip, why? Hold on. Can't get this, why can't this... I don't know why this bloody phone won't answer. What kind of stupidness is this, man? Okay, call it. Try a call back again, yeah? I don't know why this... Okay, so, caller. Well, actually, wait a while before the lines are open, actually. Lines ain't open yet anyway. I'll tell you when the lines are open. And so, back to what I was saying. And so, we arrive at a point. What is it for you in the black community? Do you see yourselves involved in a struggle, life and death struggle with the white man? You know, on things that he's done 500 years ago, or the things that he's doing now, Why is it so? Well, it's not. It's not that way for everybody, which is good. Which is what I'm trying to prove to you and say to you. Then not everybody sees it that way. I'm glad for that. That I can stand here today and say we don't have the same view. I don't think we're in a war. I don't think we're involved in a big black and white struggle against racism. I don't think so. Seriously, I don't think so. I had to re-educate myself on that to make me know where the right struggle is and where I've got to lay the correct emphasis rather than have it coming from the 23rd chapter of my imagination. No way, Jose, was I going to be settled with that. You see? I don't see it that way. Neither does the majority of blacks see it as a life and death struggle against racism, white man, white supremacists, this and that, slave. That is a what I call a diaspora view. Afro-American, Afro-Caribbean, and in the UK as well. They're stuck into that. And I'm glad out of the Afro-American, the Afro-Carib, and the UK African diaspora that they are in the minority. If we was to look at the majority of black Americans, they're quite happy to get on with life. They don't need nobody to condemn them and make them feel guilty about certain things, about their existence on the planet. Coming from a minority view like that, a disturbed, traumatized view on how the world, a traumatized perception. Because why? I keep saying it all the time. They have not sorted healing for their trauma. So they will have these mad views every now and again, these stupid views every now and again, because this is what they end up doing, having these little silly views. And so I want to establish: are we like what the diaspora and little minority group, fringe group views? That we're in a war against racism, and white man's trying to kill us, and all that kind of thing. Are we correctly orientated when it comes down to that? Are you sure? Okay, fine. The things that I can see, you may interpret some of the things that you see in society as being racist. Not everybody going to see it like that, and I thank Ra for that. That's so important. Because if it was a majority view, then I would agree with it. But because it's such a little fringe minority view, I don't agree with it. So I wanted to look at it properly and make sure that we have the correct perception of ourselves and the correct fight. The worst thing you can do is fight the wrong fight. And so I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, well, what have we got so far? And after, again, with my experience, and I said that the thing is, and I also say, if we are fighting this so-called imaginary fight, then really and truly, I shouldn't even be looking at this, really, from that minority stance, because it's only a minority view. But I don't know if there's anything that these little minority fringe groups that are doing that are preventing the majority of blacks to come through and but probably they're living their lives. They're probably having a good time. They've got no problem with marrying anyone else. But if you have this kind of a diasporic view about other people, you wouldn't, because then they would jump down and condemn you. These little fringe groups, it would make no difference. That's why they're being completely ignored. This is what I'm saying: completely and utterly ignored. Because from the majority of blacks, only a little handful of blacks here in the UK are adhering to their call. 1,000, 10,000 march, 20,000 march. It's nothing. That's peanuts, brethren, compared to 100 to 1 point something million. 20,000? Come on, that's spit in the wind. Or a fart in the breeze, everyone say. That ain't going to say nothing. 20,000? You need 100,000 signatures before you can get anything heard in Parliament. But if Parliament is not what you're going after, then how are you going to be leveraging? What are you going after if you're not going to go after Parliament? If you're not going to go after the political system, then what are you going to be using to obtain any kind of use of their resources? What are you going to be doing? If it's not along the lines of the political system, if you're not going to follow through, but that's nonsensical, because you do follow through. But you just don't want to accept that you're following through. And regardless of whether you go and vote or not, it's going to be based on what other people vote. So you want to stay outside. And I'm saying, I'm trying to look at the wisdom of these little fringe groups today. Not that they're a problem to us in reality. I'm not trying to make them a problem, but sometimes when I'm home and I'm on the radio and I hear some of the nonsense that they're spilling out, make me laugh. These people are jokers. For real. But it's a good thing they don't really have an influence on the majority blacks. But we don't. But then when I look and think, I'm looking at society itself and people just getting on with their lives, and they're black, white, orange, pink or green. So it seems like the majority, even if it's 20,000 out of a million, 1 point something million, they don't even touch a million, they can have it at 1 point something, but leave the bulk, the million, doing something else. What is the millions of blacks doing? Are they just getting on with life? I think so. They're quite contented to partake in the political system, regardless of what these little fringe groups want to say. Even though you hear them the most, they've got the biggest mouth. They're on the air 24/7, and the mouth and mouth and mouth and telling us this and that and that. And they're being completely ignored. Rubbish. And you know why I looked at it and think, let me just look and try to go into mind these little fringe groups in their mind, in these founders, these people who found them. They're movers and shakers, the founders that found these little fringe groups, right? And begin to create a reality for themselves, not even looking into the reality of what's going on in the world today. Because it doesn't match up to our living here. And this is the question. Our living here. If we're living here, and that's what I think the majority of blacks realize, that if they live here, then they're going to have to partake in the system. They're going to have to partake. They're going to have to integrate. That's why the millions have integrated. Why the little fringe groups out there going, no, not integrate. No, not talking about integration. Oh, shut up. But then again, we can ignore them because it doesn't make a difference what they say. It's not happening, brethren. And we don't even really have to look at them. But it was interesting when I was thinking about it, how that if the influence from those sections do influence some of the thinkings of the up and coming generations, because not even the youths them are gravitating around their idea. So don't think because you hear them masquerading men and blowing themselves up to look big on the airwaves, they're insignificant, weak and impotent, pimpled on society. Trust me. And I had to look at it like that. Otherwise, I'll be drawn in with them. I don't really want to be drawn into a minority group now who can't even leverage any money, who's been around for 40 odd years. They ain't going anywhere. But just to guide my mind, to protect my mind against them little fringe groups that masquerading as something when they're nothing, right? Because they will come back to our community, though. This is the thing about it. This is why maybe I have to talk about it. Remember, are you in a struggle? Are you telling me now that you are in a struggle? Life and death struggle with black and white supremacy, this and that. Do you really think that is our reality? Or it's just a reality of a little fringe group who just making it up from the 23rd chapter of their emotional imagination? And I think that's the case. But as I said, I don't even have to highlight it because they're insignificant. They're unimportant. They're not making any headway, any influence on the group whatsoever. That's why I think they try to do what they do, try to pull our consciousness away back to Africa. But the thing about it is, because they have failed to make any impression on our young folks, they failed to make any inroads on our ability to leverage wealth and our ability to compete effectively for the resources in society. And I think the majority of black knows if we follow them, we cannot partake in the effectively in the resources of the community that you're living. Because if you don't want to compete or take part in the society, why are you living here? It's simple. You're going to have to partake in any case. I keep saying this. Anywhere you go, you're going to have to partake in this. So I want to know, in your mind's eye, are you in a struggle? Is that what our life is about here? The black struggle? And what is the black struggle? You might be able to enlighten me, because I'm black. But until recently, I don't see that struggle as real anymore. I see the struggle as being political. Not racist. But I'm seeing the struggle as being political. And probably ideological as well. And if I want to, that's why I think the majority of the blacks have worked it out. That's how clever we are. We don't disappear up anyone's anus, but what I'm saying is that we as a group know how to conduct ourselves. It's not rocket science. You learn that from school. You know, when you're at school, you see little rude boys. You know, are you going to be a rude boy? Or are you going to pay attention to your lesson? I'm afraid I chose the latter. That's why I didn't have any exams. I could have done exams. I could have, come out on top. But I didn't do that because people were saying that I was so influenced by the bad boys, the bad boy theory thing, that I thought, let me just be a bad boy then. You know what I mean? And I wish I didn't, because I wish I had some exams now. I really do. I tell my sons every day, boy, if I just only had just didn't follow stupid company, you know what I mean? And, they would wind me up and get me to, become naughty. And, they wind me up, tell me, yeah, it's good, you're in the thick of things, we have to make a different kind of move. So ponder that and consider it and set out, and see whether you can come up with the answer. Let me write that down. Let me go and put these questions down, because I've got a guest in the studio who's going to read something for you. But I want you to ponder on these questions. Right? That's why I didn't want to open the lines yet. But these are the same questions I want you to ponder on. Are we in a struggle? I've got one here. Right, I've got a pen. We say, you got one, Yeah. Are we in a struggle? Are we in Are we in a struggle?
That's perfect. Perfect question.
And if we are, what struggle are we in? Are we in? Yeah, if you can answer me that, and because it's very important, because I want to show you that what's happening here is this, that the same ones who say yes we are, and that paint a picture that we are, is actually making a reality for us. Not that we live in it, because the 1.3 million blacks don't think so. I only find that these little fringe groups are the only ones that are saying this, and they're going to be the ones that are going to come around and sucking the money out of our community. You know what I mean? Because the thing is with that is, like, instead of if you think your struggle is about black in Africa, you're going to concentrate on that, innit? It was funny the other day how when this knife crime was flaring up and everybody was talking about it, you never hearing them talk about Africa coming over the airwaves. You get me? So like Africa is the sum total of our lives, And I'm thinking, why is it like that? Again, it's not the majority view. It's the minority view that want to make us think that our struggle is about black and white and racism and red tear. I find that once you have that in your mind, it becomes your, whatever you got in your mind. This is what we say. I think the majority of blacks know how to do this thing, because I think they know that Whatever you have in your mind, what contents of your mind becomes your reality. Even if it is a fact that the Caucasoid or white man is after us, there's a ways of not allowing that to become your reality. We can accept that. We're going to go into that deeper later on. And so there is a reason why I asked, because they're going to come back to the group. Now, for instance, they start other things in other countries. Not that this is a problem for us. It's not a problem for us at all, but I just want to highlight something. Because it impacts on us, because they come back to us to get the money out of our community, which needs to go around a couple of times first. You see what I'm saying? They're at the periphery sucking it out to send it back to Africa. And I'm thinking, well, what's the sense in that? To communities far and abroad. And Africa has a union of 54 countries, and they call it the AU, and they're worth combined 120 trillion. So if that union is not looking after Africa, so how the hell are we going to come and allow that to happen? Are we going to impact, or are we going to make any difference to that mountain of money that's within Africa through the AU, right? Now, you can Google it and see how much they're worth, and people say they don't work. Of course, they've got money. They're worth a whole heap of money. And then, of course, what the AU is doing that's the group, the majority group. It's the same thing I'm talking about, minority and majority. The majority African group is the AU. The little tribes and little fringe groups beyond the outside of that union are just insignificant. You see what I'm saying? So I always go for the majority view, not the minority view. People spend years in the minority view, and years trying to know where to go within the minority view. And they soon find out that the minority view, for over a period of years, let's say 40 or so years with the same minority view, gets you nowhere pretty quick. Because it says, when these fringe groups start to look at Africa, they see Africa as a place that needs help. So they're the ones that are actually looking at a place that Africa is needy. And we, the ordinary blacks, don't see Africa as needy. Why do they keep painting the picture of a needy Africa where they have to collect barrels and go to Africa to build schools when they got a big, massive union of 54 countries that can build millions of schools with their money? Yet we are told that we have to go down there. And this is what I'm saying about diffusing the consciousness of the black collective. The black collective consciousness has been diffused a little bit. We don't know where we are. The majority of blacks keep quiet about this. They don't even think it's worth their while coming down and listening, or even talking and sharing the majority on views on slavery and on reparations. They don't feel the need. Otherwise, we wouldn't be screwing about 100,000 signatures, because you've got 1.3 million. So it's not us you need to convince. It's not just this community here in London. The whole 1.3 million or so blacks. You've got to convince them that it's worth their while to go this way. And I don't think it's really happening. Now, because these little fringe groups, back to Africa, liberation groups here, don't have any money. If you don't got any money, how can you go to schools over there? How can you go over to Africa and start schools where you don't even have any money? That's a madness. You don't have any money, yet you can go to Africa and start a project. Then you're going to come back in the community and say, here's my bank account, because I'm going to start a project in Africa. Well, where's the bloody money? How can you go to Africa to start a project and you don't have tuppence to rub together? You might have a little bit of money, but it's not enough. You, the individual, might have money, but it's not enough for you to take on this. And then you pull a kind of character, a kind of attitude learning from these people that you must be against everything. So you got an attitude that goes along with it as well. So just ponder for me this question. I might add a few more, but I have a guest in the house with me. She wanted to come and share some things with you. Is that working? Yeah. Hold on. Try that.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
I can hear, but you can't hear stuff. Go on.
Okay. No, I can't hear. Hi, everyone.
Can you hear stuff now?
I haven't got any headphones.
No, but you might be able to hear
Hello? No, I can't hear it.
through there.
Hello? Hello, hello, hello?
Do you hear me through there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, well, you're one. All right, take this.
We share this one. Hi, everyone. How are you today? I hope all is well. And very interesting question that you had there. What was your question again? What was the question?
It was, are we in a struggle?
Are we in a struggle? Yeah.
And what struggle are we in?
So this I really wanted to share with everyone today. I was reading The Guardian this weekend, and there was
Hit through here?
wonderful.
Oh, you.
Hello. Yep, I can hear me. There was a wonderful article in this weekend's Guardian, and it was regarding the United Nations. So, according to to Damien Gale from The Guardian, Brexit has contributed to an environment of increased racial discrimination and intolerance. The UN Special Rapporteur on Racism has said, identifying a range of institutional prejudices that plague the lives of ethnic minorities in Britain. Speaking at the end of her mission to the UK, Professor Tendayi Chiume pointed to the Brexit-related growth of explicit racial, ethnic and religious intolerance, including extreme views that have gained ground in the mainstream political parties of the left and the right. So
what they're saying that they're within the community, there's groups that are growing.
The UN, United Nations, have sent this envoy over to assess the race relations in Britain, and they have come up with the findings that Britain is intrinsically racist, and we as diasporites here are in a very bad situation, and that we are being basically targeted biasedly by law enforcement and media here in this country. So this is actually supporting a lot of the Pan-African groups which have said this. And I mean, I'm in agreement with you in the fact that we shouldn't give them too much money, and that you know, don't get caught or sidelined or even sidetracked by these things, because there are other issues involved. However, this article is very interesting, so I'm going to continue reading. The environment leading up to the referendum, the environment during the referendum, and the environment after the referendum has made racial and ethnic minorities more vulnerable to racial discrimination and intolerance, she said. Achiume spent 11 days in Britain investigating the impact of Brexit on racial relations. But she has gone beyond that mandate, highlighting the impact of hostile environment policies on the Windrush generation and the disproportionate criminalisation of black people. The discourses on racial equality before, during and after the 2016 referendum, as well as the policies and the practices upon which the Brexit debate has conferred legitimacy, raise serious issues at the core of my mandate, she said. Many with whom I consulted highlighted the growth in volume and accessibility of xenophobic discourses on migration and on foreign nationals, including refugees, in social and print media. Achiume from Zambia was appointed the United Nations
Just fixing the paper there.
She was appointed the United Nations Special Rapporteur on contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia and related intolerance in September 2017. A professor of law at the University of California, Los Angeles, she is the first woman and the first South African to fill this role. Achiume also expressed alarm at the rise in hate crimes and incidents across Britain after the referendum vote to leave the EU. The harsh reality is race, ethnicity, religion, gender, disability status and related categories all continue to determine the life chances and well-being of people in Britain in ways that are unacceptable and in many cases unlawful, she said. She called for the repeal of the policies at the rotten core of the hostile environment, which she said affects not just irregular immigrants, but also people with the correct papers. And many who are British citizens and have been entitled to this citizenship as far back as the colonial era. Her visit, she said, came amid fraught and highly relevant public and political debates. A clear example was the resignation of the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, on the first day of my visit, she said. This resignation came amidst the still unfolding scandal of the gross human rights violations and indignities that Afro-Caribbean British citizens, popularly referred to as the Windrush generation, have had to endure as a result of the so-called hostile environment policy introduced during Prime Minister Theresa May's tenure as Home Secretary. On criminal justice, Achiume pointed to the findings of the Lamy Review, which showed how minority groups are disproportionately targeted at every stage in the criminal justice process. She called for a full implementation of its recommendations. I'm shocked by the criminalisation of young people from ethnic minorities, especially young black men. They are overrepresented in police stop and searches, more likely to face prosecution under the country's joint enterprise provisions, and overrepresented in the prison system, she said. She added, there can be no question that a pervasive and officially tolerated culture of racial profiling is at work in certain police forces, and that racial and ethnic minority children and youth are among the most vulnerable. Prevent, the government's counter-terrorism programme should also be suspended, she said. While officials conduct a comprehensive audit of its impact on racial equality, she added that the widespread enforcement of the Prevent duty is fueling distrust among racial and ethnic minority communities, especially those who are Muslim. Achiume is due to present her full report on the findings and conclusions of her visit to the Human Rights Council in Geneva in June 2019. A government spokesperson said, "We have made great progress, but the Prime Minister is clear that if there is no rational explanation for ethnic disparities, then we as a society must take action to change them." The government is believed to be particularly unhappy with the criticism of Prevent, with a source saying it was disappointing to see a series of assertions that are not based on the reality of Prevent on the ground, and said the programme was vital to tackling both Islamist and far-right terrorism, denying it targeted a particular ethnic group. And that's the end of that article.
So, interesting. This is what I was kind of alluding to earlier. Still, it sort of fits in what I'm saying, because I'm thinking if that is the case here, and we're trying to concentrate this. We understand this from longest time. We know that there is a reality that is a reality concerning the people. We don't know this. How long we've been here? Come on, man. If we don't know this now, we'll never know it again. But yet we still pulled through, and we're not the worst. And this is for us continuing to feature these things, talk about these things, highlight these things, right? And you can't hear that. Sorry. Highlighting. How about that? Any better? No. Hold on. I know. That's better. And hello, caller. How do you do this? Oh, caller. Hello. You're live.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm Burchak, and I've been listening when the guests have come in, and what she read was very, very, very effective and bringing on this information. Now, I'm not black, so I don't want to be involved in black issues, but I'm an outsider. And what she has read out there has brought me to light. Now I'm glad I'm one of these people that listen to these community stations. Because before, I was just a vegetable and I was dumb and stupid. Today, I want to also say that you have forgot only one thing that they want to bring in now. It's called the link tax in the UK. The link tax. Does anyone know, for those people who newly start listening, does anyone know what the link tax is? I'm asking the guests.
Elaborate for us and explain, because I don't think I've heard of it.
Sorry?
Elaborate and explain it for us, because I don't think I've heard of this link tax.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
The link tax is basically, let's say you recorded this show and I put these shows up on YouTube. Basically, they want to prevent copyright, right? Copyrighted music, which I know is wrong to upload music and everything. So I don't do any of that. I just upload talk shows. But what they're doing is that they're going to bring the link taxes. Basically, when you type in a news article or all these information that you're reading out, for example, I'm recording this show as we speak, yeah? And when I have the time and divide myself some time, I want to put this up on YouTube. But what they're doing is that they're going to, basically, they will have bots, automatic bots. If you try to link something to an article or link, for example, expose the truth of something, yeah, what they will do is they will tax the search engines or force the search engines to take that off air. Okay. For example, if I like one of those recordings, I do record James radio shows. They will force a search engine or YouTube to take it off air, yeah, and then there will be bots, monitor. And if they don't take it off air, search engines will be heavily fined. Because all of these things that now you're doing, it's not just you reading it. It's some people inside that's some people that's telling you the truth. All these people, that lady from South Africa, and people, there's also whistleblowers out there, outside. And all these things are being exposed.
Thank you so much for your contribution. So what did you think about the article we just read? What do you think about the UN and what she has to say? This UN official, Mrs. Chiume, what do you think about what she has to say about Britain and British society? Would you agree with her that this is an intrinsically racist place and that we're in danger and we've been biasly and unfairly treated, and it's still happening now?
I am
beyond
saying
the Stephen Lawrence report, and beyond all the race relations that we've worked up to now, this is still happening. She's saying that we are very, very vulnerable, especially so our children. What do you think of that issue?
Well, as me, I'm thinking that yes, it's becoming a very bad state, and I am really, really scared of the fact that you've read this article, because tomorrow they can do this against everybody else.
And
you
this is kind of how it all
and
starts, doesn't it?
We
because we were the first one to be enslaved, and now modern day slavery is the work system. Everybody's been forced into enslavement. They're eluding you that this illusion that money is your reward for your work, but really it's an illusion. It's not actually real. It's a concept that we are falsely believing into. So therefore we are all being enslaved under the concept of work. So you're right.
Look,
it started
I'm
400 years ago.
sorry
with
to intervene.
And me and
sorry.
my ancestors, and now it's evolved to this. So you're right. It could potentially be something that's going to evolve to the rest of humanity. And I'm glad that you called in as a person who is not of African descent and you have an issue on it. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Yes, definitely, because I'm disabled, and if they force me to go back to my country, then I can't go back to my country because it's already very bad. Are
you a citizen of Britain? Are you a citizen of England? Right. So do you have national citizenship of this country that you're living in at the moment?
I'm Turkish and British. I've got British citizenship as well, and I'm Turkish as well. Well, I thank you for reading out, and I've got to go so that I can let other callers intervene as well. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time.
Nice one. Thank you, Bertrak. So you're in tune to Genesis Radio and the People's Talk Show alongside myself and Sister Karen here. Lady that does yoga, you've heard her before, and she is upstairs in the shop.
Come on down, get some phytonutrient juices. 320 Lee High Road. Mm-hmm. And
some beautiful juices. I tell you, I enjoy it, man. It's money well spent.
Thank you.
It's lovely. Oh man, I could eat that all. I can think about it right now. Mouth begins to water. Yeah, but anyway, so let me give you out numbers. Yeah, numbers are 07931. That's wrong. Live calls are 07440 370200. And I repeat, 07440 370202. And one more time for luck, 07440 370200. Bring it in the studios. I don't think that the text line is working at the moment. I didn't even see it. Oopsie. Is it on there? It's not even on, I don't think.
No, it's not.
Actually, you can he's charging up, innit? You can actually also text in on that number. Live calls. You can text in on that number as well, and voice your opinions if it makes you feel good. You know, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, but so yeah. Okay, so we're gonna continue with this.
There is another article which really, really sparked my interest this week, and it's from the same Saturday Guardian. And this article suggests scientists set to grow miniature brains using Neanderthal DNA. This article suggests, and is actually one of the first modern day and only publications that I have seen where Caucasoids are admitting to having different DNA sequences to our own. Because, you know, there's that common sense that's that, they try to jump on the bandwagon of we're all from Africa. And we know the truth that, you know, there are different races and different levels of humanity in this thing. So, right now, scientists...
Well, I beg to differ, but we can discuss this later.
Scientists are...
Before you go on.
Yeah.
Could you just repeat what you just said?
No. Don't quote me like that. Yeah.
No,
what I'm trying to say is there are some people, I believe that we are humans, yeah? We're all humans, and there is a human race. I have heard certain discourses which argue that there are aliens amongst the human race, and that some people have been, or there's a discourse. There is actually work out there that suggests there are some animal DNA within some people.
I was on a WhatsApp. I think it was Facebook. You hear me on there having an argument. Same.
No.
Argument. Oh, I'm on there. This brother. The same argument is trying to put over that. No one. This all out of Africa paradigm is wrong, but he didn't have any evidence.
Okay.
He just had his opinion. He admitted it's common sense. And I don't care what evidence or research you got. I don't care what scientific evidence you come up. I'm using common sense. I thought, you can't be serious.
Yeah, no, you can't.
You can't come do things like that.
No, you can't.
Because you can't make it up as you go along.
No,
you can't go according to what you feel. That's why the whole idea of learning is. You know what I mean? People take time and they...
things of proof,
you know what I mean? They take time to research. It's not about the 23rd chapter of anybody's imagination. You might feel something, but they never... He never had no proof of what he was saying.
Word. Okay.
Nothing.
Not going to work.
So I'm with the same opinion that we're not from Africa. But I said, how do you work that out? No, he was saying, and one rude man intervened and said, you blacks were having sex with monkeys.
Oh, goodness.
Right, because that's why... What is he saying?
It's actually the other way around.
The DNA...
Yeah, it's actually the other way around.
So I said to him, Africans were having sex with monkeys, that's why...
Rubbish.
So I'm saying to him, well, if Africans were having sex with monkeys, why don't you go and try and breed one? And then you have all the evidence for your theory, because I didn't know apes were compatible with human beings.
They're one of the closest.
Yeah, but I've yet to... But there's
DNA.
no way a monkey can breed for a human.
Oh, no. Do you know?
You know what I'm saying?
I'm not even sure. And we shouldn't even be experimenting on that level.
Yeah, but I didn't know. You know what I mean? But if it was...
Yeah.
We'd have a half monkey, half man already, brethren.
Do you think that Neanderthal man is human or human?
You have to...
What is in Neanderthal?
Well, this is the whole thing. You've got to remember, there's no species called Neanderthal.
Okay.
There isn't a species called Neanderthal.
Yeah.
What it is that the place where they found some primitive bones in Neander in France.
Okay.
That was named after the place they found the primitive bones.
But there's also discourse that say that this Neanderthal was a ancient evolution of humans, so they're different to the way we are now in terms of their genetic makeup and their physical. Yeah,
but once they could breed with us, because at the end of the day, you know, the hominids, right, that left Africa, because everything left Africa, exited Africa, because the whole world was populated from Africa. Yeah. So when the hominids left, the man-tending creatures who weren't proper man, because they're not proper man. No, hold on. Their differences that not in DNA. Their differences was in the cortex, the brain size,
and the head size.
They had a small. That's why they had. That's why they had stone tools.
So that difference then, you'd say now that you are a human, and if a Neanderthal was alive and walking with us today, you're human and it's a Neanderthal. Would you agree that there's a difference?
No, because at the same time, this is what happened. when they left when they left Africa, when said Neanderthals left Africa and went over to where they were, the modern Africans, the Grimaldi man that penetrated Europe 40,000 years ago, went and had sex with the Neanderthal.
Okay.
And had children with the Neanderthals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
During the Ice Age, and when the ice cut them off,
Yeah.
and when the ice melted, Africans went back to Africa.
So this is my thing.
And carried them picnic with them.
This is it. This is my thing. So the Neanderthal is one species of human, and the African would be another species.
No, because if they wouldn't be breeding.
If they mated together and brought back the child, is there a difference?
No, the mere fact they were able to mate.
Yeah, means that
means they're sheer
another species of human.
No.
Look, you have the Borneo monkey, then you have the gorilla, then you have the silverback. They're all monkey family, but different species.
Right,
So
but they can't be different. Yeah, if that's the only difference, yes. If they're going to be like species, I don't understand the difference. I mean, we've got 2 legs, I don't understand. But I mean, look, we ain't got 6 heads. We have, we look like each other. So at the end of the day, what difference are you going to say? Yeah. That was skull shape. I mean, Neanderthal was short and squat because he had to survive in Europe. If it's just some phenotypical difference in it, what the hell? But the physiological remains. Otherwise, we can't. I mean, man can't breed a donkey. You know what I mean? I've heard of heard of some weird.
I've seen some crazy things. Yeah.
Man cannot have. Listen, as much as they want to say it, right? The law that governs our DNA.
This is it. We mustn't.
There's no way.
We mustn't.
We can't jump species like that.
But I've heard about things.
Yeah, people come with their theories about. I mean,
I've heard about people.
Yeah, that's theory.
Yeah, is it
theory? That's theory. That's but everyone's got a theory. But at the end of the day, you haven't a human. I mean, how many humans have you seen walk down the street looking like that? With a massive head or something. It'll be a freak of nature if that happens. But we're not talking about the exception to the rule. Yeah. We're talking about the rule. Humans are. And if you can breed with me, because what happened, the Neanderthal woman was fat. Yeah. And she must have had a 10 plate to work off of. I mean, we were the 10 plate because the first humans were born in Africa, near the equator, so it could be black and pigmented. So whatever 10 plate there was there, in actual fact, we gave the Cro-Magnon man, who came later than the Neanderthal, was a union between the African and the Neanderthal that produced the Cro-Magnon. But they're not different species. They're one same human species.
This article.
Yeah, go on.
Scientists set to grow miniature brains using Neanderthal DNA. Scientists are to create miniature brains that have been genetically engineered to contain Neanderthal DNA to work out how humans differ from our closest relatives. Small blobs of tissue known as brain organoids will be grown from human stem cells, edited to contain Neanderthalized versions of several genes. The lentil-sized organoids, which have no thoughts, replicate some basic parts of an adult brain. They may show for the first time if there were significant differences between human and Neanderthal brains. Professor Svante Pabo, director of the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, said Neanderthals are the closest relatives to everyday humans. So if we should define ourselves as a group or a species, it is really them that we should compare ourselves to. He led the successful effort to crack the Neanderthal genome and is now focused on bringing Neanderthal traits back to life through gene editing. The lab put Neanderthal craniofacial genes into mice and pain-perceptive genes into frog cells, which could provide hints as to whether they had a different pain threshold to humans. Now the lab is turning its attention to the brain. We're seeing if we can find basic differences in how nerve cells function that may be a basis for why humans seem to be cognitively so special, says Pabo. The stereotype of Neanderthals as gormless and thuggish is being rewritten as we find that they buried their dead, made cave art, and had brains larger than ours. The Neanderthal genome, sequenced by Paubo's lab in 2010, proved they interbred with our ancestors successfully enough for all non-Africans DNA today to be up to 4% Neanderthal.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
There's no thing. How can you come to a non-African?
But what he's saying is the stereotype of Neanderthals are gormless and thuggish is being rewritten.
Yeah, but don't forget,
Yeah.
Neanderthal is not a species. That's what I'm trying to say. They don't even say that there. Neander is a place in France where they found these primitive bones.
Yeah.
So it's not a species called
No, but
Neanderthal.
the primitive bones, they have named Neanderthal because of that. So
So if you go back, if you go back to the beginning of the world, or the origin, look at it's a white man in it. You got there.
That is there. This is the Homo sapien. This is the African from back in the day. First modern day African as we know him today.
What before? Was the one?
That's the Neanderthal.
Yeah, and this one is what?
That's the modern day African as we know.
Yeah, but the
today.
first human to appear obviously was primitive.
Modern day human. Sorry.
And I wasn't that high. It was pygmies.
Short pygmy. Yeah.
They were the Twa.
Yes.
The first humans on the face,
Yes.
and they don't even quote that in here.
Yeah. This is supposed to be a twat.
Well, it looks like his
It don't,
arms too
but
long.
this-
His arms too long to be a Twa brethren.
This is.
A short, about 4 foot brethren.
But look, you see when they say here, when they say here, they're talking about whether they put the picture right, but they're talking
Nah,
about
look
the
at his
very
features there.
first-
European features, ain't it? Come
This one
on.
is, yeah, this is the
So,
Neanderthal.
but I mean,
This one is
who
supposed to be-
wrote this article?
This was written by Hannah Devlin, and she is from Leipzig, and she is actually a university scholar, and she works in the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology.
Yeah, we know that each scholar got their different views. You know what I
This
mean?
is it.
So I have to go and research her view because
this was such an interesting.
yeah, it's interesting because what I'm trying to say. But again, she doesn't state that there's no such.
Says here, the Neanderthal genome, sequenced by
Okay,
Pablo's
carry
lab
on.
in 2010, proved they interbred with our ancestors successfully enough for all non-Africans' DNA today to be up to 4% Neanderthal. That's saying the Africans have got one set of DNA. Everyone who is not, 4% of everyone who is not African has traces of Neanderthal DNA inside them.
But that's a confusing because if the Neanderthal is still human and still African,
Yeah.
because he left out Africa, didn't he?
Well, this is saying no. This article is saying no, it didn't.
So where he come from? Mars. Please don't tell me this Mars theory. I know. I'm not saying that. Yeah. No. See, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying with this. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's vague, very vague, and for an anthropologist, she should have mentioned that the Neanderthal is not a species. You shouldn't allow people to believe that it is a species.
In the lab, under Pablo's office, scientists are extracting DNA from ancient human and animal fossils excavated at sites across the world. The team's success relies on taking obsessive precautions against contamination. A speck of dust floating in through a window can contain more DNA than the few micrograms of ancient bone under analysis. Researchers shower and don spacesuit style uniforms before entering rooms kept sterile by UV lights and an air filtration system. Under these stringent conditions in 2010, his team reassembled the code of the Neanderthal genome from degraded samples taken from 4 females who lived in Europe tens of thousands of years ago. The genome proved, sorry everyone, my reading's really crap, I'm going to start again. The genome proved interbreeding took place through DNA passed down to living populations. About a third of the Neanderthal genome is still floating around in modern populations. However, there are also genetic dead zones, large stretches of the Neanderthal genome that nobody inherited, possibly because they conferred disadvantages to health, fertility, cognition, or appearance. Is there something hiding there that really sets us apart? Palbo said. Is there a biological basis for why modern humans went on to become millions and eventually billions of people spread across the world and have culture? It is uncertain if our fate is linked to the cognitive differences, but he says it is tempting to think that, yes? The work focuses on differences in 3 genes crucial for brain development. Using the editing technique CRISPR, changes were introduced into human stem cells to make them closer to the Neanderthal versions. Chemical triggers are used to coax stem cells to become neurons, which clump together and self-organize into miniature brain-like structures millimeters wide. The lack of sensory input means one blob varies from the next. Start the organoid growing and leave it for 9 months and see what happens, says Grey Camp. who is overseeing this study. You don't get a well-formed human brain at all, but you do see the multiple regions have kind of formed. You can study the synapses and electrical activity and early developmental differences. The scientists will compare the Neanderthalized organoids and the human ones to assess the speed at which the stem cells divide, develop and organize into three-dimensional brain structures and whether the brain cells connect differently. A dream result would be...
Is that working?
Hello?
No. It's on the mic.
Hello?
No.
Hello?
Knock the mic. Knock it like that. No, it's not. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Hold on. You turned it off. Got careful of that switch up there.
Sorry. I wonder where everyone heard from last.
Well, no, you're going to start.
Start again.
I was saying to myself, I'm going to come and hear you through my headphones
Oh,
again.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try and read it through quickly. Scientists are to create miniature brains that have been genetically engineered to contain Neanderthal DNA to work out how humans differ from our closest relatives. Small blobs of tissue known as brain organoids will be grown from human stem cells edited to contain Neanderthalized versions of several genes. The lentil-sized organoids, which have no thought, replicate some basic parts of an adult brain. They may show for the first time if there were significant differences between human and Neanderthal brains. Professor Svante Pääbo, director of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, says Neanderthals are the closest relatives to everyday humans. So if we should define ourselves as a group or a species, it is really them that we should compare ourselves to. He led the successful effort to crack the Neanderthal genome and is now focused on bringing Neanderthal traits back to life through gene editing. The lab put Neanderthal craniofacial genes into mice and pain perception genes into frogs' eggs, which could provide hints as to whether they had a different pain threshold to humans. Now the lab is turning its attention to the brain. We're seeing if we can find basic differences in how nerve cells function that may be a basis for why humans seem to be cognitively so special, says Pääbo. The stereotype of Neanderthals as gormless and thuggish is being rewritten as we find that they buried their dead, made cave art, and had brains larger than ours. The Neanderthal genome, sequenced by Pääbo's lab in 2010, proved they interbred with our ancestors successfully enough for all non-Africans' DNA today to be up to 4% Neanderthal. In the lab under Pääbo's office, scientists are extracting DNA from ancient humans and animal fossils excavated at sites across the world. The team's success relies on taking obsessive precautions against contamination. A speck of dust floating in through a window can contain more DNA than a few milligrams of ancient bone under analysis. Researchers shower and don spacesuit-style uniforms before entering rooms kept sterile by UV lights and an air filtration system. Under these stringent conditions in 2010, his team resembled the code of the Neanderthal genome from degraded samples taken from 4 females who lived in Europe tens of thousands of years ago. The genome proved interbreeding took place through DNA passed down to living populations. About a third of the Neanderthal genome is still floating around in modern populations. However, there are also genetic dead zones. Large stretches of the Neanderthal genome that nobody inherited, possibly because they conferred disadvantages to health, fertility, cognition and appearance. Is there something hiding there that really sets us apart, Pääbo says? Is there a biological basis for why modern humans went on to become millions and eventually billions of people spread across the world and have culture? It is uncertain if our fate is linked to cognitive differences, but he says it's tempting to think that. Yes?
Well, that's I said. Go on. Yeah, go on.
The work focuses on differences in 3 genes crucial for brain development. Using the editing technique CRISPR, changes were introduced into human stem cells to make them closer to their Neanderthal versions. Chemical triggers were used to coax stem cells to become neurons, which clump together and self-organize into miniature brain-like structures millimeters wide. The lack of sensory input means one blob varies from the next. Start the organoid growing and leave it for 9 months and see what happens, says Gray Camp, who is overseeing this study. You don't get a well-formed human brain at all. But you see that multiple regions have kind of formed. You can study the synapses, which is the electrical current, and the electrical activity and early developmental differences. The synapses are where the join-ins of each nerve ending, the growth of the human. The scientists will compare the Neanderthalized organoids and the human one to assess the speed at which the stem cells develop and organize into three-dimensional brain structures, and whether the brain cells connect differently. A dream result would be that the genetic changes make for longer or more branched neurological outgrowth, says Palbo. It would be a biological basis for why our brains would function differently. The work will not reveal which species was smarter, but could hint at differences in the ability to plan, socialize, and use language. Let me just read that again. The work will not reveal which species was smarter, but could hint all differences in the ability to plan, socialize, and use language. Okay. The lab is also looking at how Neanderthal genomes commonly found in the DNA of Europeans and Asians influence brain development. By growing organisms from cells taken from living people and looking at how the Neanderthal genes switch on and off, they can see whether a person's brain development is subtly influenced by their ancient Neanderthal ancestry. Human and Neanderthal lineages split about 400,000 years ago, with our ancestors staying in Africa and Neanderthals moving into Europe. About 60,000 years ago, the archaeological record reveals there was a mass migration of humans out of Africa that brought the two species together again. This intermingling has led to suggest the human and Neanderthal lineages are really a single species.
Stop there. Yes. Problem. If those Neanderthals were living in Africa, they must have been black anyway.
He agrees with you, though.
That's what I'm saying, because this is what I'm saying. So it was all blacks.
Yes.
You see, this is what I'm trying to say for the longest time, because you can't be white and live in Africa that time, because the sun belt will kill you. You need melanin, and anyone, and global law says anyone's born near the equator must be black and pigmented.
Listen, he disagrees. He agrees with me.
Go on.
About 60,000 years ago, the archaeological record reveals there was a mass migration of humans out of Africa and that brought the two species together again. This intermingling has led some to suggest the humans and Neanderthal lineages are really a single species. But Parbo disagrees.
Parbo,
the gentleman who works in the thingy.
with the dog, with his saliva thing.
No. Parbo is the gentleman who...
Pavlo, not Pavlo.
Yeah, he's...
Pavlo.
Parbo.
Okay,
he's the guy who done the research.
Okay, good.
Yes, there's growing evidence that Neanderthals, particularly towards the end of their history, did some form of art, he said. But if I'm a little mean, I would say it was very modern art because I can't see what it depicts. And there is no evidence that Neanderthals explored the ocean as humans did at least 100,000 years ago. A feat that perhaps has as much to do with mindset as with being inventive enough to build a boat. It is very risky to set out into the Pacific and look for something when you don't know there's something out there, says Palbo. Neanderthals were reasonable. Like other mammals, they didn't go out into the ocean without seeing anything on the other side. To me, the biggest question in human history is, why did we become this crazy?
Well, this is what I'm saying now. That's coming from a Caucasoid point of view as well, in any case. But the thing about that is, if they all left Africa after thousands of years, they must have been black.
Well, this suggests
they don't say that
Africa was one set of humans, and this suggests that in Europe you had
but
Neanderthals
you forget,
different set
before they went into Europe, they were all together in Africa. You read that? It said they were all together in one place.
Yeah.
You see what I try to say? And then they split, and the Neanderthals went to Europe and left. So when they left Europe, they were black. When they left Africa, they must have been. Well, what colour could they have else been, brethren? Because, I mean...
but look, it's not saying. It's saying about 60,000 years ago, the archaeological records reveals there was a mass migration of humans out of Africa that brought the two species together again.
But read back.
This is still...
in the first... it says that they were together in one place first. They were all together in one place. The Neanderthal, before that part, I read, they were all, then the Neanderthals left and went to Africa, went to Europe. Because they couldn't be living in Europe before they met these people. They had to leave Africa in order to live in Europe, which was under ice anyway. You see what I'm saying to you? So, it's the same question I asked that brother on the social media. I said, where does the rest of the people come from then? If not by mutation or like that, because Neanderthal means primitive. It's very primitive people. That the anatomical modern man evolved in Africa, where
human and Neanderthal lineages split about 400,000 years ago, with our ancestors staying in Africa,
so them
and Neanderthals moving,
leaving. So they were they were there together for so many. So what color were they when they were together?
And even though it's saying they were together, what it's saying is there are distinct differences between Neanderthal and Africans.
Yeah, but if you talk about,
listen, it's saying yes that they both left there, and you're saying that we were all the same. They just looked a bit different from us.
Yeah,
so
because they have to have skin pigmentation. Yeah. You know, it can't be white. You see what I'm saying? Because it would never. That albinism.
Let's assume that the Neanderthal was black.
Yes, of course it was.
So you think there's no difference between the Neanderthal and the African?
No, we're talking about minute different. Yeah, but I'm talking about diacephalic, which is a long-headed.
Why do
the
you
difference
think that
in the long-headed and the mesocephalic, which is
the
short head thing, you know. It's a matter of heads and dimensions, but we still walk upright and we still have a crap and we still, you know, sex and we still do all of that. Humans, a human species. And it's not like, otherwise, where the hell did they come from? Mars?
Okay, so agreed.
You know,
they all come from Africa. We all come from Africa. Yeah. Do you think they're the same as us?
Yes, exactly the same.
They have been extinct for the last 90,000 years, apart from little traces in 4% of Europeans.
Aye, so that's what I'm saying.
4% of Europeans still hold that Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah.
So where's the rest of the Neanderthals? Why have they been
because the anatomical modern man didn't leave Africa till 40,000 years ago.
So you think there's a 40,000 year cycle where we're all going to die out within 40,000 years? They're just on before us because they left earlier. No,
I think we survive. We're made to survive better than they are.
Okay.
Because we adapted much more better than they did. Because remember, if they went to Europe, they must have gone in the Ice Age, brethren, and they must have died off. And there's also an albino Neanderthal. You know what I mean? Because they were interbreed in any case. Because we never know nothing about nothing. We just we weren't born fully loaded. So we interbred with each other until we separated with the totemism. So I mean, you know, the human race still is incestuous. We do, you know, you're my 6 degrees of separation. But anyway, but I'm saying that Neanderthal gene is alive and kicking in Europeans. That's what they say.
4%, yeah.
Fine, because when we left, when this cold snap came in and we disappeared, we went back to Africa. While they stayed there, locked down. Some blacks too got locked down in the Ice Age and began to die off because the melanin was too strong for them, brethren. And it was the albinos that survived that. It's like how if they're in our climate, they die off very quick. And we survive longer than they do. Okay. Because, I mean, albinos die very quick in Africa, you know that, yeah. They can't live long because of they're exposed to ultraviolet rays and all the sun bombarding the earth. They died.
Very delicate.
Yeah. So those then they survive longer in Europe because the very clouds were ice. So they were king in that environment. We died off because we were the melanin prevented any amount of sunlight to come through because it's too thick. You know what I mean? So they were king in that environment, brethren.
Okay.
Melanin couldn't help you there. In fact, melanin was an impediment to our survival in Europe. That's why they found thousands of bones in Russia with rickets. That's how they knew that these were black people.
Lack of vitamin E.
Yeah, because they've got rickets in their bones.
Yeah.
They were melanated people.
Yeah.
But the Neanderthal survived king because he's got no melanin recessive, and so he's able to live there longer. So when he migrated with the Neanderthal, alongside the African Neanderthal, the albino Neanderthal migrated out as well. You know what I mean? Exited out of Africa, you know, Exodus, alongside with them. But then the blacks died off.
Your thoughts, people?
Yeah, you know, if you know more than what we know, you can call us on 07440 370200. And I repeat, 07440 370200. So what would be the point? What's your thoughts?
No, I just found this really interesting article, and I wanted to get everybody's thoughts.
So what was your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are...
What do you think it's saying then?
My thoughts are, is there a genetic difference between the African and the European? My thoughts are,
how can it
is
be,
there
though?
a genetic difference? I know several Pan-African groups. I know several religious groups. I know several people who I've met over the way who have always said to me, no, they're a different species. They're this, they're that.
You know why that is?
And this is a person who is of this supposed different species suggesting exactly the same thing.
Well, there's a lot of scholars who may feel that that they got some ground on that, but the majority of scholars know that the out of Africa paradigm, one species, is a fact because of our makeup, our physiology. A brain, you know what a brain is? A brain is just a depository of programs. That's all it is. Brain don't run your life. Your life force is intelligent.
Yes, I agree that we have.
You understand?
Intelligence, energy,
and it's very intelligent.
Energy. I agree.
The
with
brain
that.
is what we live through.
Yeah.
Not with of. Even breath, we don't even need breath, brethren. Because
no, we do.
Because when
we do.
No, when you pass on, you won't need none.
No,
but you're still alive.
No,
that's what I'm saying. To live on this planet, realm, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
To act on this planet, you need breath.
Yes.
But some people call them breatharians. You heard about breatharians?
Yeah, they don't eat food. They just breathe. And you know what? It's a yogic thing. It's a yogic philosophy that you can live with just breath. You can train your body to get all the nutrients you need. All the micro phytonutrients you need are here in our existence with us right now. If you breathe a certain flower, it's going to have an impact on your chemical physiology within you. And so, yes, breatharians.
Right. So, in order to substantiate this, they haven't told us where they come from.
No.
So it's no point telling us that, and you don't say where they come from, brethren.
Yeah.
They come. I know they got to say they come from Mars. If we're not the same species, which one was first? Soon you're going to tell you that black people weren't first with Neanderthals. You see what I'm saying? You see where they're going with this?
This is my other thing.
You got to watch this. You got to watch these people in our brethren.
That he is making out that
he was the first before the blacks.
The work will not reveal which species was smarter.
All right. You see what I'm saying?
Hint differences in ability to plan.
All right.
Socialize.
And they said the Neanderthals was that.
Language.
They were saying the Neanderthals were better than the Africans because Neanderthals were
trying to hint
buried their dead.
Subconsciously, because he's trying to say they're on par or they're similar or they have an equal intelligence.
Exactly.
But the truth being, if there's a difference, they're dead already. And
so how come it can't? But it said what it wouldn't. The thing wouldn't reveal what.
It wouldn't reveal which species was smarter.
What wouldn't reveal?
The test that he's doing and the fake brain that he's building and the synapses that he's going to analyze and the electrical currents he's going to analyze.
These people, brethren, are they from the UN or what?
This is a gentleman from a anthropology. Evolutionary anthropology.
You see, the trouble is with these things. If you keep to the basic law and rule, very clever, subtly trying to make the Neanderthal original owner of Africa, not the black man, but yet they have to tell us where the black man come from.
This is the point.
You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? And where anybody's come from.
Yeah.
So
I kind of picked up hints of that within this article.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So we got to be careful with them thing there. Yeah. They don't know.
This is from research as well at the Natural History Museum.
I've got text here. Text.
Yeah,
one missed call.
3 missed calls.
Oh, 3 missed calls. Sorry about that, peeps. I don't know what was happening there. Which one is this one? Text sender 242 says, can the Caucasoid eat as high on the tree as the African can? As African man. Can Asian man be as near to the Supreme Being because of watered down DNA? Well, I say to that, right? You know my motto already. The Supreme Being has multiplied itself into myriads of peoples and things. So that simply means anything is nothing without the Supreme Being. Because it's it that manifest or became, even if there was a Neanderthal species, it would have to be the Supreme Being that becomes that. And from the Supreme Being becomes that, it's a lowered self. It's not an important self. We better learn about the high self, which was before any manifestation. That's our quintessential self. that's the state of our quintessential self, which is perfectly equal poles and undifferentiated. So that's left us with a place where we can go to in meditation. We can achieve that, like the collider thing, the machine, trying to create the first bang, the first bang, and they try to create that. So we can create that. We can create that in any sense in yoga. When you
we use a lot of breath work in order to raise the kundalini, in order to raise your vibration, in order to engage all your chakras and create an innate sense of harmony and balance within your body.
So this now, to me, is just saying to confuse issues. I think that's one of the biggest red herrings that I've ever read still. But I mean, I heard still, because it's trying to say something about the Neanderthal and the African. That the African, Neanderthal is better than the African. They need something.
He's hinted and implied that he's trying to investigate whether that is the issue.
Because what happened, they have to prove continuity. And they've been trying to prove continuity. Europe has always been trying to prove that they existed from time immemorial. Yeah. But if they did, they existed as an African albino. So it's about trying to find continuity in the continent, and they can't find any continuity. So this is the only way now they can. They didn't like the Neanderthal man because he was ugly, squat, and where the Cro-Magnon man was nice and looking more modern type. So they didn't accept the Neanderthal as them because it was big head and squat and short.
This is another element this brings up for me is what's the man that they built with the little two things on his head? Frankenstein, no?
Yeah.
This is a modern day Frankenstein situation that we have here. There are some things that you're just not supposed to play with, and as man we know that. There are some laws that you are not supposed to break, and there are things as a man that we cannot physically manipulate as men, and a lot of us agree and stick to those laws in humanity. Right. You got this Caucasoid now and his team with all their money and all their supposed intelligence to create a species
of artificial brain,
an artificial
with an artificial intelligence. I mean, they're on about that already.
And when they finish this experiment, where's it going to go from there? What, you're going to actually create the Neanderthal man himself? Is this Frankenstein's? This is what is happening. This is what bothers me the most about this article. The fact that you have people running around trying to impersonate and recreate a divine thing, something as divine as life itself. We have no right as humans to endeavour and interfere with that process.
Well, once we break the law,
that bothered me the most about this article.
Because once we violate the law, you know what happens in it. Like like the Frankenstein story, it ends up killing them.
You create a monster you can't even.
You can't put back. So it's good because it will kill them eventually. Their own creation will kill them. Once you outside the laws that govern, this is why I always stress the laws on my show. The 11 laws of Ma'at.
Yes.
You got to 11 laws.
11. Okay, the original.
Yeah, okay. The original. And because there's 11 faculties in you, so the laws that govern all of our makeup.
Okay.
Once you program that into your prefrontal lobe, then you'll know exactly where you are. But that's quite interesting because I know what she's trying to say. She's trying to use science to back up her ideology. You know what I'm saying? Which I know where she's going. She's trying to, because she weren't too sure whether this Neanderthal was the first. Because they always say we live together. So how do we?
I don't agree with in this article. They left Africa and then they left and went to. I don't agree. I'm sorry. I am of the essence here that true human beings come from Africa. I believe that human beings and true humans all originate from that space. Anything outside of that, for me, is a huge problem.
That's right.
And it's not down to... I'm talking about the 4% with the Neanderthal DNA, if I've got to be honest. Because to me, if you're human, you're from one place. The 4% Neanderthal DNA out there, that is clearly different from the original African Homo sapien. That's what I'm talking about. That for me as well sparks bells because I've been hearing all this discourse over the years that look, there's this alien out there, there's these people who are walking around like people and etc. etc. And then tutus.
Yeah, but so with that, with that on itself, what could we glean as a community from that? Nothing really. I know that it fuels the conspiracy theories about humans. They come from different parts of the planet. Well, some groups like the Dr. Zedork believes in Malachi that come from
this is it, the Nubians. They believe that the people are from Sirius B
and Sirius A.
Sirius A.
I'm saying that.
Yeah.
So, but if they're people at all,
Yeah.
then they must share the same genes as us. They can't be. I mean, you know, why would they have 2 legs anyway, and arms? If you come from Ceres B, why would you even look like us? You know what I mean?
I contemplated that.
You know what I'm saying? What? Something's wrong there. Come on with a helmet, like one of those things where you can't breathe, and he's got 2 nostrils. You know what I'm thinking? You just look like us, brethren. Yeah. So why do you need to look like us if you don't come from the same? Are you not made from the same creator then?
But then,
you see what I'm saying?
This whole ideology, which sort of is on par with that they have super powers and they are able to manipulate time and space and the elements that we still see as etheric. They have full manipulation and advanced technologies which actually make them move at a speed we can't even see, and so they have embodied the physical. This is what just a load of
this is what I'm trying to show you. I look at that lot of Cosmo. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. That's for the unsuspecting, because if you're clued up with your studies and your research, you'll know that that's again no sensible anthropologist would ever dream about that, brethren. You might have 1 or 2 who try to, you know, make a little headway with that. And that's obviously she's really pressured on finding some kind of continuity for her race, brethren.
Yeah.
Right. That's why she's harping on about, you know, Neanderthal as a species. Well, she well know that Neanderthal is not a species if it's a primitive form of ours, then directly she'll be okay with that. But she's trying to make the Neanderthal. If you look at the drawing of that.
Look here, though.
Look at the drawing. A typical Caucasoid brethren.
And this is the thing. Why I mentioned as well the animal element. Yeah. This is what she says here at the top. God. She says here.
Nothing like African. No features. No phenotype. African phenotype there, brethren.
Nothing there. That's what I'm saying. Are they different? And hear what she says at the top here. Something about animals. We started off. Remember we were saying something about animals.
Yeah.
Here we go. In the lab under Parbo's office, scientists are extracting DNA from ancient human and animal fossils excavated at sites across the world. Human and animal fossils. Yeah. So what are they saying? The Neanderthal was...
Well, breeding with animals or something.
This is my thing.
You know, why?
And why would the animal fossils be collected with ancient human fossils? And why? What is the link with that to do with the Neanderthal genome?
Well, you know what we call that non sequitur. It doesn't match up with the original statement, so that's why they do that too. They operate through non sequiturs. So that's nothing to do with what they said in the beginning. You know what I mean? So the whole idea, I mean, to me, they haven't said anything, even to the end. She hasn't said, you know, just made a statement that they're finding this and they're finding, but nothing clear. It's very vague.
Reassembled. In 2010, his team reassembled the code of the Neanderthal genome from degraded samples taken from 4 females who lived in Europe tens of thousands of years ago. You
got to remember, you know, they was full of hoax. Remember, there was a hoax called the Piltdown Man. You heard about the Piltdown Man?
No.
They were so desperate to find continuity that they buried this skull of a monkey beneath the gravel in some place in France, and then claimed, oh, we dug up something, and they had that now. Oh, we found the missing link. You know, or the European continent. It's called a Piltdown Man, which was a hoax. So if they can go as far as that, then you know anything they come up with that tries to allude to a different species, and then to do with Africa, you get the picture. They're trying to make a different species, not human, that inhabited Africa.
This for me is terrible. Under these stringent conditions in 2010, his team reassembled the code of the Neanderthal genome from degraded samples taken from 4 females who lived in Europe tens of thousands of years ago. The genome proved interbreeding took place through DNA passed down to living populations.
Interbreeding with what?
This is my thing. Interbreeding with Africans and animals and Neanderthals. About a third of the Neanderthal genome is still floating around in modern populations.
See, it's very vague. That whole thing is very vague. Will fit conspiracy theories in any case. And as an anthropologist, I think she's very poor in her explanation. She didn't really give anything away, and no scientific evidence there. She only alludes to it, but at the same time, if you see the picture of this,
and they're saying that there are large stretches of the Neanderthal genome that nobody in modern humanity have inherited. That nobody inherited, possibly because they conferred they conferred disadvantages to health, fertility, cognition, or appearance. So what they're saying is 4% of some people have some 4% of Europeans have some Neanderthal DNA. And of all the Neanderthal DNA that they collected from these 4 women, there is dead zones. So there are large stretches of the Neanderthal genome which are not present. So if it's saying 4% of them have a trace of the DNA, if they got a DNA strand from those 4 women, say it's got a 96%, 4% would have the 4% that's left over. There's 90%, 96% of that genome that is not present in humanity at all.
Where them there? Where is it?
Who knows? But this is saying there's a little.
You see, the thing where that comes,
people left.
We got a lot of Back to Africa groups really believe this as well. That's why they think that the white man has no place in Africa at all. You know what I mean? And I say to myself, wow, that's a bit presumptuous to say. And it's only the diasporans that believe this. They'd rather find some other place for the white man, especially the Nation of Islam and Farrakhan. They
love him.
They
hate. Love him.
You love him?
I like Farrakhan. I mean, I know all the bad stuff as well, but for me, he's got a strong moral message in some of the things he says. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily force his Muslimness onto you. Sometimes his talks are just about moral and just about what's happening in society. I love when he talks like that. I don't like it when he gets into the whole join us and be Muslim and come along to the Muslim thing.
It made me laugh one time.
Yeah, I love him
because
man.
you know what,
and he's talking for the greater good of the whole community.
Well, I don't know about that, but
respects,
but
I hear you.
Let me tell you, he had a picture of a white Jesus. He was spit on the. I don't know if you saw it on a YouTube clip when explaining to the congregation about the white image of Jesus. Yeah. He goes, "This is not Jesus."
No. See?
And it's not Jesus. And he's going on fine. And then I'll show you who Jesus was. And he pulled a picture of this geezer. What's his name? The one who found the thing.
Oh, he didn't. Okay, we have a problem there too, but yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But this is it wasn't far from the Caucasoid.
Oh, no.
So I'm thinking to myself, well, if he wasn't Jesus, then he definitely can't be a bloody Jesus. Because I'm expecting a black, I'm expecting a dark skinned, melanated individual. He's gonna turn the page and see this mulatto, just like himself. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, even if that first one wasn't Jesus, that's not going to be Jesus. You know what I mean? He ain't far from the two, brethren.
I'm going to
look for it. I was, you waited, because you say, that ain't Jesus. He went on about, this is imposter. I'm going to show you who Jesus is. This is Jesus. I mean, turn the page over. Oh, it was a disappointment. I thought we had.
Oh, sorry.
It's a mulatto.
Crazy.
Same as the other brethren. So what? I thought no, because what's the founder of the faith called again? That one there.
Elijah Muhammad.
Before it was his teacher.
Yeah.
He come from the same bloody ethnic. We come from the same ethnic universe, brethren. He wouldn't go back and say the black man is Jesus.
It's a huge problem.
I was kind of shocked that he didn't do that.
It's a huge problem. Have you heard the body of knowledge that Hitler actually said that his whole World War... Hello?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. That his whole World War initiative was because the Americans and the Europeans have exterminated the original Jew.
No. That's what he said.
The original Jew being...
That's why they wanted to kill Hitler, because I'm thinking it's just as simple as what Hitler's a bad man. Yeah, but Europeans is not any better.
Yeah.
Why would they want to kill him quick so
fast?
All
the Jews that he murdered, they're all imposters, and they were imposters who took over us and our natural ordained place in society. So he was basically saying, no, this isn't right. And all these people are running around saying they're Jewish. They're not Jewish. I'm going to exterminate them because the truth is that, I don't know.
But the thing about that is, you have a lot of the our groups now have been influenced by this thinking that the white man has no place in in the world.
We have to understand that it is not our place to exterminate or gentrify or correct or do anything to any living being.
Right.
So we have no right to determine.
Well, this is
that.
African,
if you know
right?
your divinity and you know who you are, be you proud and brawling.
Right.
You don't have to trouble nobody else for their something. If they want to claim it, go over start and claim it and do what you want to do.
Well,
in a space.
this
There's
is
enough space
African.
for all of us.
This is African. I think we've been educated the wrong way because it affects our politics as well in Europe. If we have the wrong perception on the origin of man, if we think that he's nothing to do with us and not our children, as we say that we're the parents, aren't we?
Yes.
We're the first, according to them.
For those who do not have the 4%, yes.
Yeah. How's you going to work that out then? You know what I mean? Because you're going to examine everybody in the world, brethren, to find out. You're going to go with a swab and start looking for the 4% who could have multiplied by then into tens and thousands of people. Not come just 4 people with it. It could be more than 4 that got that. You know what I mean? But I'm thinking to myself, say, if we're not influenced correctly and we try to go back and say we're the only one on the face of the planet, and that's kind of a bit dangerous, though.
Very.
You know, the opposite is dangerous because if I'm saying that I'm the only one human, then the rest are. I can look at them and I could want to do them something because they're not human. I could say, when I kill you, because you're not human anyway, so I can't get charged in your mind.
Right, over
so
life.
we've got to be very careful, and this is why we say, if we're the first on the face of the planet and we want to establish that we, like the Twa, have a well-balanced society and we drew that from the Twa, then we cannot afford to be distracted and sidetracked on there where we're going to feel, okay, the rest of you take a running jump and we're the man and we're the boss of the world because we're the... that's not being able to create a harmonious society. And I think if we can't create a harmonious society, if our plan is not to go about
understatement, I agree totally.
to create a harmonious society where there's chaos, we can bring
unconditional
peace.
love.
All right,
that's what we
Who
need.
should be the one who is spouting this? Because we've had from the Twa a classical example of a harmonious society, and we act sometimes like we've never been in a multicolored society before. But Egypt was full of it, brethren.
Yeah.
We knew nothing but multi-racial society. We've had it all of our existence as a black people.
You know, I have often said, and this was before I was educated and before I realised like what we do now. I've often said that we are too kind and too loving because we embrace everybody.
So we'll change that, have we? We're going to become
not
barbarian.
Not necessarily that we have to change it, but we are the greatest cultivators in terms of.
Yeah, but we should
we've
show
always
it.
Been too kind.
I don't know. When you say too kind, are we saying that we shouldn't be?
I'm not even suggesting.
Is that our downfall?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know because I heard that before. I know people look at it and say, "Hey, we should be too kasafran. We should be like them." So
I don't agree we should be like them, and I don't agree we should be murderous or we have the right to judge anyone else. But just that's just it is what it is. You know?
I'll tell you the truth. To be honest with you, when the Africans, when Herodotus came to Africa, what was he? He said, "These people are the most just."
See?
That's what I said to us. You know, you had to confess. These people are the most just of all men, and I'm thinking, well, you got that message right. So, and it says one traveller said, if I got anything on my door, I leave it. The Africans wouldn't touch it. Yeah. It's not mine. They bring it and say, this is yours. Yeah. They wouldn't. So how much years of training? But people think we're born fully loaded. A lot of black people think Africans are like they're born with a halo around their head, civilized. Till one guy says, even in our savage state, we were still civilized. I thought, come on, brethren. That's a contradiction. How can you be in a savage state and be civilized at the same time?
Yeah, what did he mean by that?
He said, because I suggested that everybody was born savage. Yeah. And we had to learn. I mean, the minute you tell me that we were born fully loaded, something is definitely wrong there. That means it can't work. Can't work.
Hang on a second. Hang on.
We weren't born holy, brethren.
I kind of disagree to an extent because when you're born and I've used this example several times, that you never tell the chick where to go. If the mother of the chick dies and the chick has survived to a state where it's able to look after itself, when the weather changes and it's winter and it's time to go into warmer land, nobody has to say to that chick, or there's no surrogate chick mum who's going to come and say, okay, look, come on, chickie, mummy's dead, let's go and fly to the warmer climate. That chick, it has an innate knowledge. And that chick knows, boom, it's starting to get cold. You know what? I'm going that way. You know what? That way feels this. This is the way I should be. And that chick finds his ass to Africa where it's nice and warm and he's on the plains with the rest of the wildlife.
Do you know what they call that? Instinct, which are for the animals.
I don't know if it's instinct.
Yeah, because
innate knowledge. That, and, you know,
yeah,
from my own personal
instinct.
experience,
you know what I mean?
From my own personal experience, when you eat a certain way and you live a certain way, you become adept to that knowledge innate to human man. We all equally, as a different species, I'm going to say species now because I'm talking about the chick and I'm talking about man as a human race, but we also have an innate memory log, which is our cognitive advantage as humans. So we also can acquire.
Well, I kind of beg to differ with that because, you know, this is a good point of discussion, because the reason why I say that is because the animal, we what we say in the kinetic side of things, that nature brings us so far. Like, for instance, we're not born knowing to walk. Because if I was to lock a baby up, sorry, a bad thing to say, or a child have never seen anyone walk, do you think that child would know how to walk instinctively? It's done by imitation. There's some things that we learn has to be done by imitation. It's not innate in us. We saw, that's why a child would watch us and see it and then practice as well. Not that he knew how to do this thing, but because there's some processes in us which is done through imitation. And through that's how he learned to walk.
Arguably, because we haven't ever had an experiment in human life where we've isolated the child to test whether that
exactly. Well, I don't know about it. We couldn't do that. We get in trouble with the. You know? But so this is what they've researched. That the imitative faculty in us that imitate some things. If we don't see anybody do something, we're not going to do it. So the instinct for the animals, because nature gave animal instinct because they haven't got the will to choose. I mean, a dog can't say, I ain't going to poo, I ain't going to walk yet, I ain't going to walk with you today, brethren. If you had that, it would take over the house, right? You know what I mean? He would have us on a lead. You know what I mean? Rather than, I mean, why would a dog be so stupid, brethren, to be pulled back the place? If he was really clever, if he was really clever, he would pull us back the bloody place. But because you can only go thus far on the side of his brain. You know, you've got the reptilian brain, you've got the cortex, but on the human, it's got a bigger thing called the hypothalamus and the prefrontal lobe. So it's a massive amount of brains, more than what. There's a reason for that. The animals can only got reptiles. That's why they call it a reptilian brain.
Well,
it's because
they say the pineal gland and the pineal cone is a link DNA. It's a genetic. The fluid within there it holds DNA, genetic memory. So opening the third eye is directly. That's why it's associated in yoga with a direct link to your ancestors. All right. So when you open your third eye, that innate knowledge I'm talking about, when they say you're connected to your ancestors through that ajna point, your they're saying that is a direct link to the ancestors.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because there's an argument me and this brother was having as well. Right, Mr. Aton.
Greetings, man.
And he was he doesn't believe in ancestors.
Oh, God.
But yet he uses, when he comes on the air, you know, my greetings to all the biggest, and calls all their ancestors, but you don't believe. So the question that I'm thinking now, you said that, for us still as a group who believes like him, are the ancestors alive or are they dead?
I believe that they are floating. These are these spirits that you say, because we're just
then
here.
Are they alive still, right?
I believe, they're alive, because that etheric energy that we have, that is controlling our physical manifestation in ourselves. When we're dead and the physical bit dies, like you mentioned earlier, that etheric energy, that spirit of ours, goes somewhere. So wherever it goes, there's a whole bank of them up there, and those are the ancestors. Arguably, they're all little stars.
Well, that's what Marcus Garvey said.
Yeah, I agree with Marcus.
He said, "I'm going back, and I will come back with countless millions
See it there?
those that died in Africa, those that died."
Yeah, pray to them ancestors, yo. Because when you ask them for anything, I swear, yeah, you get it.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to establish, because this brother now has put me on the back foot, because he's trying to make out. He even tell people the ancestors are not alive, only by name. So I wonder how many people really believe this. Some of these modern day blacks, modern day diasporans, they're really tricky, you know. You got to watch them. They don't really believe. Africans do pour libation to their ancestors.
It's important. It's part of our shit, yeah, people. Yeah,
Excuse me. so how is it? How is it then that if they're not alive, we'll be pouring?
No,
yeah, these are people called back to Africa.
No.
These are back to Africa groups, brethren.
Yeah, no.
You see what I mean? In the UK here,
on the etheric level, and they are manifesting
existing
within you,
all right,
as well. Yeah, because your blood is an electrical current. Everyone says, "Oh, well, you got magnets," and our blood is our own metal. Our blood is metal for us. Yeah, the zinc, the iron, the potassium, all these metals. That's within us, and they hold our genetic code. When they talk about mitochondrial DNA, your mitochondria is the part of you that was existing 40,000 million, however million years ago. Your mitochondrial DNA is your ancestors. Your ancestors are within you because
but
of
are
the
they actually existing?
Pumping within you. They're existing through you. Existing. Your granny is part of you because she gave you.
Yeah, but this is what I'm trying to establish. See, because when you say that. They're existing through me. It's like they're saying they don't really exist. Like, I think that they're actually operating amongst us, brethren.
Amongst you. And listen, you see this synapses, this pineal gland, this little electrical bank of DNA knowledge that is innate to all of us. That's connected to us through the mitochondrial DNA. Do you know, listen, we were talking the other day about trauma.
Yeah.
And how trauma can be passed to people via birth canal, and it can be passed on generation upon generation. That same trauma, think about it in a pleasant way. Let's not call it trauma for a minute. Yeah, trauma is one element of that. You've also got glee and happiness, haven't you? You've also got there are other sort of things on par with that emotion of trauma. So the same way that's been passed to you is the same way everything else.
You mean someone can pass that? When you say that they can pass, my parents had a problem with something. They could pass that on.
Yes, to you through that DNA. So through your blood, through your whole genetic makeup.
That I would respond with that.
If your DNA strand is 7 and then something happened and one strand got etched, your mum's not going to have you and give you the bit that's etched away. Because it's gone forever when it's gone. When there's a change, it's changed forever.
Really?
Special like that.
So in terms of understanding ourselves and being able to heal ourselves and change this problem, if the trauma is banked up and blocked up energies that because of what happened to our ancestors, then the repair for that would be something different, right? It would be in our hands, because I want to read you something here, because I wanted to share this with the people as well.
Let's hear.
That about this generational trauma thing, and I'm thinking, there's a saying that says one of the more persistent illusions of this reality is time, specifically the concept of linear time.
Yes, I agree.
Which actually an illusion.
Yes, it is.
Linear time does not actually exist.
No, it's created by man.
By time we have been told. Yet we've been told this from young.
Yep.
I want you to carry on for me 1 minute, yeah? Yep. Carry on talking.
Okay,
about
cool.
the linear time, what your opinion.
Yeah. So I agree totally that time is a manifestation that was created by man, and that they're using it to control people to a degree. I believe that people are forced to wake up at 7 in-the-morning, make it to work for 9 in-the-morning, finish their day by 6, and then at the end of that day you got 2 hours to socialise, or if you haven't got children, if you've got children, you got 2 hours to get home and make sure everyone's fed. And they're keeping everybody systematically programmed in order to forfeit and fulfill their agenda. That programming is time and money. You know, so I agree to the extent that time is an illusion created by man in order to justify its slavery to a degree. What else can I say about time? I'm going to try and finish reading what Heru was saying. Hold on a second. I want to hear your thoughts, actually, on everything we've spoken about today. Where was you? I've forgotten where you were reading from. I was going to try and finish off reading. I said a lot about time being manifested. Of course I can. Harry's back. Hold on a second, everyone.
I was just trying to read my crab toe there. She can read that.
Doctor's writing.
Yeah, it's like done in about 10 seconds.
Good man.
So, as I say, linear time is very important to. You can comment as well on what we say, because it's very important that you join in. Maybe you want to just listen, that's fine. It's yours. It's People Talk Show. You haven't called in. Numbers are 0744 037 0200. 0744 037 0200. You can also text in on that number and have your thoughts on it, because it's very important that we know this, because we want to know how the community is feeling, seen, and where we are exactly in the scheme of things and how we're thinking, because sometimes I think we let people think for ourselves, for us, you know what I mean? And it's sad to know that we've been following certain mind
it's nothing to do
concept that's so long, and it's like ain't doing nothing. 40 odd years we've been no change in our community, so we're trying to make a change. And I'm going to talk about the what you think now before we finish it today about the actual war thing, because we covered the DNA a little bit, and no one called in on that. That's fine. We also wanted to cover the war. If you think that you're at war, we want you to think about that. Remember, I told you to think about that. And the lines are now open. In any case, they're probably waiting for me to say that. The lines are open. You can call in any time now, to where we can suggest: are we in a war? And if we are, what kind of a war do you think that we're in? So for the moment, we're just harping on this thing because we want to know how our concepts are correct, our mentality is correctly orientated. Because one of the most more persistent illusion of this reality is time. Specifically, the concept of linear time, which is actually an illusion. Linear time does not actually exist. And that's great implications for us, you know.
Yes, I agree.
Because we work by the clock, the 24-hour clock. And so if it doesn't actually exist and it's a false noma, then plenty of our lives that are evolved around it is false as well. So it's at least, I think it's a relief to know that linear time is not real. Because that makes us aware that there's something else about us that we should know, that we're not really knowing. And this is going to help us to find it. Because all tied up with this trauma thing as well. Because this is going to enable you to heal yourself. Right? If you think that you need healing. Because at the end of the day, healing is very important. Because to be able to self-heal, and even in the mind, to straighten up our trauma, to straighten up our thinking, enable us to think properly, but because we've been led by the nose in many occasions. That's why I said to you this morning when I started out, you know, the correct mindset, the diasporan trauma then seem to take us over, especially when it comes down to who we are and where we're doing, especially in the community. 1 minute we've been led to the worries of the community, our children killing themselves, you know, gang warfare and all that kind of things, and all of a sudden we're concerned about that, and then next minute somebody else drags us to the plight of Africa. I'm trying to mix the two, but it can't work. You can't be in one voice telling us, oh, there are like you're actually forced to talk about community because of the the onslaught of our youths getting killed, and I reckon those groups that are trying to steal our attention to events in the motherland must know what they're doing. Because I don't like the 1 minute. How can we move so fast from concerning ourselves about the things that surround us. Our children killing each other, what postcode wars, and they got no future, no jobs, and they're talking about it, and we spend a week on that, and we feel all of a sudden, blang, now it's time for Africa now. You can put that down. I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about the motherland. And I feel robbed like that. Because the two don't correlate. It's like what we call, we call that the non-sequitur. The first one doesn't match the second one. And that's what they keep doing. I feel manipulated through my emotions sometimes. And I wanted you to kind of recognize this for yourself. And if you feel that you've also feel manipulated. Because there's a lot of us that may even feel that they've been cheated in some kind of way through their emotions. And yet we turn around and blame other people for manipulating us through our emotions because we're black or whatever. And the same thing happens when the group deal with their people. They tend to want to manipulate them too, because they've already been manipulated. And it's very unfair for some of our movers and shakers of our back to Africa consciousness to realise that these people have been raped and then go and rape them themselves. It's so important, it's so unfair that they have been re-raped, in a sense, and consciousness has been re-raped. And we experience this every day. People are re-raping our consciousness, you see what I'm saying, with their ideology, and not allowing the community to spring up, you see. And this is where we lack. That's Sorry. Hello, caller? Hello, caller? Of course, sorry, could you call back again, please? Because I don't know why this thing won't even... Okay, caller, could you call back, please? I do apologise. Let me see what that is. Okay. Could you call back, please, caller? Sorry. This bloody phone gets on my nerves. Huh. Oh, I see what's happening there. Okay. Oh man, this thing is... Oh, why don't this thing... Oh man, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know why this bloody phone... Sorry, caller. I might have to try again. I don't know why this phone won't click on. But anyway, oh man, what's going on? Let me put this on charge. Hold on. I don't know why. I don't know why. One sec, folks. Okay, let's put this on the charge. We'll try it this way. See if it works that way. I think the connector is not a bit dead. Okay, caller, go ahead. Hold on. Hello, caller. Hold on, this is madness. 1 minute, caller, 1 minute. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can be heard, or?
Yeah, pardon? Go on, I can hear you.
Yeah. Now, there were those the things that you were talking about, and when I have said, obviously, not all of them, but I've said, like, I'm not interested, and I'm an outsider. I'm not interested in history or what happened then. I always like to be interested in what happens now and what's happening in London.
That's right.
I mean, I see things from different things. There have been people that have been speaking, and there has been, not me that's saying this, but there are people that's saying that there's a lot of people now, you know, And going back to Africa, I mean, I've listened to some tunes. And even a white Spanish man, yeah, when he was there was a reggae band, and he's a white Spanish man. He says that one day going back to Africa is a must, and he said like, you know, and hailing Salah, and this is a Spanish man that's singing all this. Now this was in '97 when I investigated the band, and this is all Spanish band, and when I start to look at these things like, what is he trying to say? Like, is it all going to build up here? Tension going to build up here? Is everyone going to have to go back to their original countries one day? And if that happens, if anything possibly breaks out here, then I have to go back to my own country, which I'm not going to be treated very good at this moment in time. And I've seen what's on the news in my country, you know, with the disabled, what's happening. And, you know, and over in other countries, when people will have to go back, they're not going to get the same thing. You're a tourist. In every country, you're a tourist. You know, in my country, you're a tourist. So think about this. And being about now, I do bring information to some people. And I say to the others, I'm not, I like today, what's happening. I mean, there are a lot, there are some black people that think exactly like I am, that's also disabled right now as we speak. But they cannot ring up Genesis like so. I assume, it's alleged, that some of their parents are not letting them ring up. They're thinking that this station is, you know, too much this and that and this and that. And that's why they ring up the main street. But they're not coming through to this, to listen to this. Right now, as we speak, when a sister or a brother gets lost, yeah, I heard the other stations especially, what they said now is, they're saying, is this sister, if you can find her, or if you can find this brother who's lost, or he's lost in the park, please let us know. And they started to do that now. You know, and this has been time. Before, they wasn't doing that. But now, all the other people now have woken up, you especially. You know, Genesis, there's something about this that brings another level. You just also talk about your own issues, but you also talk about things that goes out in the world. You know, people like Chamberlain, people like you, people like a lot of things. That's talking about different issues. Here, I'm bringing up. That's why I prefer the Genesis to all. You know, and that's why, because you don't talk about then. The past is then. You talk about the present and the future of what's going to happen then, and then you walk. What's happening in the future. Right now, the manager, as we speak, has developed the TV station. And the first time it's going to be all around the world. You know, people watch. And he's going to get that on Freeview as well. He will do it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And when that happens, it's going to show you not just the history, it's going to show you what's going to happen in the future and this and that, and taking it from a black perspective. You know?
Well, you know what, Bertrand? We don't have to take it from a black. We don't have to take it from a black perspective, you know. And I'm thinking, we're hanging on to this word black. Everything's got to be black, you know. And we're the only community. You don't hear a Chinese community saying, "Oh, you got to take it from a Chinese perspective," or "You got to let's take it from an Indian." Why is it only the black community always reverting to this black thing? I don't understand it. You know, this is where it can make us sort of alienate ourselves with other groups, because we don't get the attention of other groups, or they want to invest or want to help us with our cause. We want to run it alone. I don't think that's part of it, because we got this hostile stance with ourselves. You know, black, everything's got to be black. Why? Why not human, brethren?
Oh, that's a good point, because I started to not write like in the shows now. You know, I started because some one support worker of mine said, and he's white, and he said that not every black person thinks the same. So you've got to be very careful of what you write. So that's why I don't write like I used to when I used to sing on archives. When I used to, I don't. So now everybody has a different perspective. But I'm talking about the now history. It's not history now. It's now. What's happening now and what will happen in the future. That's what even myself. Yeah. For example, there are a lot of people out there right now who are singles. Yeah, who can't get married, who thinks a lot like me. But how many of those will come here and ring up the station? I'm the only disabled at this point that can ring up the stations. You know, not many disabled are being listened to.
Because you know why?
Not many, but
You know why that is, Brett Track? They don't feel that they want to ring up here because it's not community based. It's more ethnic based. That's why I was saying a lot of people are afraid to engage in our community because we've got this hostile ethnic stance all the while. You see what I'm saying to you? Which probably look, that's why I said earlier that there's 1.3 million blacks or so in Britain. And out of that 1.3 million blacks, maybe if 5,000 believes in what we're hearing on the radio, coming over the airwaves every day, people will think that, that's what the black community is concerned about, but it's not really so, because the majority of our group are not interested in it, brethren. They're more interested in getting on in life. That's why you haven't got support. Go on.
It's not just the majority. It's not just thing. It's a whole of Britain. It's a whole. Look, I go on Facebook and everyone talks about hee ha ha ha. They're not interested in what this information is about. They're not interested in all this that's going on, all the struggles that people are being put in. So it's not just it's just the whole of Britain. They're just laughing and hee ha 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 because of one. This genetically modified food that we're eating, oranges that we're eating, genetically modified, years ago, when you used to taste the kebabs, it used to taste wonderful, little meat. Now, look at the things that they put in, phosphates and all these things that they've put in, and even with our community in Germany, and we're so, as our community, as a Turkish community, no one stood up and said, hold on, what are you putting in our kebabs? Why are you putting those phosphates? No one stood up, and they just going ahead. You know what? It's just so much, and when you start to struggle, when you start to do good, and when you start to do good for a lot of communities, either allegedly you get taken out. Look, Michael Jackson, for example, Prince, for example, all the things, Peter Tosh, and not many more, like a Turkish person, Muslim Yazıcıoğlu. He tried to bring togetherness, and he got taken out as well. Man called Muslim Yazıcıoğlu, he got taken out, and there's many other people that's trying to think the struggle to bring togetherness and all that, but they get taken out and they get hurt, and it's a cold world. Because it's run by a few people that doesn't like this to happen.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this, yeah. If it's run by a few people, it is not because that's the way it should be, but because people are taking advantage of the situation. Because every ruler or every elite that runs the society has his day in it. So what we got to realize is that this day, this particular group, and there's no manual that tells us that any group that's ruling is supposed to treat us humanely. Yet we keep expecting people to treat us humanely. But yet we turn around to be the only one that treats people humanely. But I tell you something, I saw a clip the other day about some Africans dishing out some justice with about 3 people. I don't know what these 3 people have done, but they tied their hands behind their back and put them on a pile, and the whole village came out. This is in 2018, brethren, and they actually tied their hands behind their back, and you could watch them. I got it on my WhatsApp. I couldn't believe I've seen something similar before, They were lighting them a fire, brethren. Put petrol all over them. And then set them alight, and his brother was screaming out, he was jumping up and down, he was walking, and smoke was coming out of him, and I watched him literally fry, brethren. And I'm saying to myself, what kind of justice is that? I don't know if it's wrong, but what they must have done something wrong, brethren. And there's one of them, you know what I mean?
I'll ask you a question. I'll ask you a question. This, if God forbid, right? You're going down the street, and someone you really love. For example, you had, for example, I had a son, right? And when a man goes and hit and run my son, purposely, I see it, but I couldn't see the number plate of the car. But I found, in the end, I did a lot of hard work. I found that guy. I'll probably light the man on fire, because I'll tell you why that is. Because I'll tell you, sometimes the man can get away. There's no cameras. There's no thing. And then you understand, sometimes the law don't sing.
That's right.
And you see the film Outlaw, right?
Yeah.
This is going to become like Outlaw in the end.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying about that, which is that was my thoughts exactly. But if you did that in this society, you'd go to jail, brethren. You know what I mean? You would go to jail if you did that. But
all right then, let me tell you something, man. They're already gonna bring out private security firms, and what I'm saying is this: for those maybe who has tuned in, or maybe there's somebody else tuned in, they have actually on a journalist on a mainstream station. He tried to put out this, but the commissioner of thing, if I heard this right, denied that there was private security firms. Now this means private firms. This means that there won't be police, because police couldn't. So then they will say, like Petra, I am the law, so I can do whatever I want. I'm the law. Look at these series that they brought out. The Shield, Shield. Yeah, he does a lot of corrupt things, and these like corrupt cops. Yeah, you know about the Shield, where they try to steal from the Armenian mob, and they get away with it. Corrupt cop. Yeah, in the end, he gets sacked from his cop job, but he still does the same corruption. And this is what I'm trying to say. So how are the bad apple? Because not all cops are bad, but there's a bad apple in the police force. So if they bring guns into the country, or if the bad apple, and the good apple is trying to stop the bad apple, how comes it's one thing different for one person and one thing different for humans? Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
How comes it's so different, and how comes it is such a cold world?
Well, see,
and this is what I'm trying to ask.
But those questions cannot be answered, because they're not even questions. Because if you realise that you're in a society that's run by a particular mob of people, right, elites, right, and you have to, you can't. Well, you're not going to commit suicide, are you? This is what they were saying about some of our groups, that we should have committed mass suicide rather than, it was that Quaney West, that guy called Quaney West was saying that black people wanted to be enslaved, you know what I mean, and they accepted slavery, right, and which was which caused a big falafel in the community. People were saying that black people are walking into slavery, and we should say that that's not the case. But you can't answer these questions about why are people cold, or what it's just what it is. Our kind of response to it, because we can't unseat them, unless you're talking about rebellion, you're talking about revolution. So we can't unseat them, brethren.
What I'm saying is, all right, the riots happened, right?
Yeah.
All right, we go to this. Yeah, and I always say this again and again. Okay, maybe there was some police inside the riots. Maybe they didn't go heavy-handed. Yeah, but what did happen? The anarchists came in and they spoiled it. They totally smashed it up, spoiled it. And the anarchist, the man said, don't burn down my shop. Take whatever you want. But no, what did he do? He burned down the shop as well. And who won in the end? The government won. Oh, they put these silly people. Oh, the job cuts. That's why I did it. Oh, my life isn't good. That's why I did it. They see the silly people that they put out there. And then these anarchists are fools, total fools, want total anarchy, want the thing against law. And what happened? The government won in the end. Now look what's happening. More taxes, more difficult things for your community, more difficult things, because the anarchists, someone brought in the anarchists. I don't want to say who, because I don't want to get myself into trouble. Someone brought the anarchists in. We know why it broke out. We know why the riots broke out. We know all these things. But I don't condone violence. But what happened in the end? Everything. Look, the riots in Seattle broke down, right? A lot of people got hurt. Riot police got hurt, thing got hurt. That was a really real scale riot. Yeah? And then what happened? The anarchists came in and they mashed it up. And that was probably another black thing that had happened. But what happened? The anarchist comes in and mashes it up and destroys it. Who won in the end? The white racists won. Yeah, but and then they brought more laws in. You see what I mean? I don't like the anarchists coming into play, but someone's got the agenda to bring the anarchists in play.
Yeah. But Bertrand, the thing about that is, and the government never really wins in the end of the day, you know what I mean? Because they'll always be underneath the scrutiny of the people. So when we're trying to talk about the democratic situation, the government never really wins, because it always have to be on their toes, the P's and Q's, because it only take one movement to start a full-scale riot, and they lose out big time. Because look at Brixton. What happened to Brixton? They had to get, what's it, Scarman report. They had to go and sort things out properly, brethren. Look at the Windrush. They lost on that one, didn't they? Big time.
No, what I'm saying
the government don't always win.
Right, I don't condone violence, but the riots in Brixton, the thing, all right, it was scuffles, obviously thing, but they had an order. They didn't go in and just like totally burn down a person's shop on what like I saw. But when I saw an anarchist come in and started to hurt all the women and children, and especially things and this and that, and start burning down religion and starting to go absolutely crazy, which I saw, like my brother said to me as well, like he saw this thing on YouTube, if I heard it right, and the man said, please don't burn down. He put his hand up, he said, all right, take what you want, don't do anything to my wife and my family. But you know what the man did? He said he was laughing. He said, I'm going to burn down the shop. And he did it. Now, why did you have to burn down a man's shop? I mean, what did that make? That made the government win. And this is why I'm saying to you that people can't take back time.
Okay, well, we're talking about time.
Happened.
But you see, time is what? I'm going to end the show with that. About people can't take back time. What is time? Time is an illusion, because we spoke about that. We're reading about it, actually, about linear time. You can actually take back time, brethren. You can. Because you can go back and forward into time, you know. We don't know where we can go forward and we can go backwards into time.
I don't agree with that. Only.
Well, let me tell you why.
I can agree to disagree.
Oh, yeah, of course you can. All right, Bertrand, listen.
But I like your show. I like your stance.
Yeah, man.
And you're a great presenter and a very understanding. And I really, really am recording the show. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm happy that you have a platform like Genesis.
Yeah, man. Enough respect. Bless up. Yeah, our sister's come back now. She disappeared for a while. If you was wondering why I'm hearing her dulcet tones back. But hear what? I want to continue with the last 40 or so minutes left of this crab toe reading here. And why I said to Bertrand, you can go back and forward in time, because you can do that. And we don't even know any of these things. Because I'm going to show you why. If you believe that the future, the past, the future, and the present exists, that's an illusion too. Everything is happening simultaneously. And you know what? I got that from a white guy. I was just watching it on YouTube, but it was almost similar to what we say in the Commission side of things when we talk about time being fluid. But what time are you talking about? Linear time, 24-hour clock time, which the world is run on. We got them by the ghoulies. They base their whole society on linear time, which is an illusion. So what did I say? Everything they got within 24 hours, a 12-hour clock is all an illusion. So if you can wake up from this illusion, and if you tune in tomorrow on my show, we'll be going more depth into this, because that's what my show is about. Because I feel we can heal ourselves with this knowledge. You can go back into the past and feel differently about what happened. You understand? You can change your trauma. Because if it's a generational thing, from people that have gone before us and experienced it, how are you going to stop it? Unless you're able to go back into time and break that trauma there so it stops there and that you don't pass it on to your children. We have to do this because this is what we call regression. And that's why I always emphasize you've got to know how to cultivate trance and things like that. Because you're going to have to use those tools to regress yourself. But if you can't regress yourself, let me read a little bit and show you what I mean. Actually, an illusion and does not actually exist. We have been told from young that it does. We are taught to treat the past as an actual thing that happened and is over. That's where the illusion comes in, isn't it? So when you got things in the past and you keep talking about the past, it's actually, and they're telling you, oh, it's over, because it's past, isn't it? And yet the past is always present. If you know what I mean, let me show you what I mean. For we are taught that the past, that the future is a actual place that is going to arrive, as well. An illusion because the past isn't real. Neither is the future. Past is a word we use to describe another present moment. And it's all happening simultaneously. Through our individual consciousness, we have this illusion that this is all there is. It's like you have a house with all these rooms. You might be in the living room, somebody else might be in the kitchen, somebody might be in the bedroom, but we are in the same house. So the house represents the present moment, but there are just differences in experience of the present, you see. And this can be very useful if we realize everything is happening right now. So that thing that happened way back when, there is a version of you that is perpetuating, experiencing that moment. And there are versions of you, if you think, imagine forward to the future. You imagine yourself next Thursday afternoon doing a certain task or with a certain person. You can imagine that, right? But it's not happening then. It is actually happening now. How about that? And that is proper a reorientation of your thinking in line to help us, reorientate and heal ourselves. You can't be carrying around bloody trauma all the time, quantum field, because here it really gets interesting and actually very useful. Because when you remember something, and you can do it right now, think back to this morning, right? When you woke up and you're getting ready for your day, right? Now you remembering that you're experiencing something that's already over. You see? You can imagine something in the future. You can imagine yourself tonight getting ready to go to sleep after a long day. But here's the thing. When you're imagining something, you're actually catching the moment, the memories of your future self. Like right now, you can remember back to the version of you that was waking up this morning. But what if the version of you that was waking up this morning is imagining to where you are right now? Memories and imagination are the same thought energies. We're just experiencing from different sides of this illusion. So how does this become practical, since everything exists that exists, has existed, and does exist, and will exist? It's all happening simultaneously. We are just experiencing it through these different subjects or different individuated consciousness. That means you can literally you can literally access that version of you that is in the future, experiencing your highest and best reality. You see? Imagine that. You can experience your highest and best reality. What's happening now? We've got a lot of diasporan groups that are out there and thinking about slavery, thinking about how their ancestors were chopped up into 14 pieces, thinking about how they were castrated, thinking about they were hanging on a poplar tree, smelling like magnolia, and they were thinking about the worst of themselves. How do you expect that to heal, brethren? If you're thinking about in the future, you think about the worst of yourself, because right now you're not really thinking about the past because it's happening simultaneously. When you think about your ancestors, you're thinking about something that's already passed, isn't it? But you're experiencing it right here, right now. Yet you don't want to experience that, because if you're passing on post-traumatic slave syndrome through a generational, you need to through the genes, and if it was affected not through bad genes but through the trauma, where you can untraumatize yourself and still with the same venom in that sense, you could still then recreate a situation where you're not traumatized, because you need to stop passing it on. If you pass it to your children, then you need to stop passing it on, brethren. And this is the only secure way that you could ever stop passing on this genetic trauma, by realizing that you can get the best of yourself. The best of yourself by imagining the perfect and the best of yourself. Stop imagining the worst of yourself. Stop imagining slavery. Stop imagining all them things, everything like that. We've got 2 minutes left? Yes. We've got 2 minutes left.
There's no advice.
Oh, no, come on.
That's all he says. I mean, the paracat just for me.
Okay, right on. Yes. We have the next presenter in the ass. He's going to come in with some, you know what, I'm so... One sec, folks. Hey, Mr. Briggs. You know what makes it... We have DJ Riggs in the house lining up now, because we're going to be finishing next 2 minutes. So I'm going to hand you over. And man play some lovely music. I love listening to DJ Riggs. So really relaxing, especially on a summer afternoon like this, brethren. So hope to join me tomorrow in about from 1 o'clock in the afternoon onwards, because my time has changed now. I want to thank Sister Karen for a beautiful interjection there, and we love her. She can come past her anytime anyway, because she's here in the studio. Yeah, man, enough respect. So, okay. Well, what can I say? We're going to let DJ Riggs set up, because he's got no ads. So I'm going to... We've got 2 minutes ago. Do you want me to let you in now? Or
No, it's not.
Yeah, 2 minutes and we can go. Okay, so we're going to say... it's been a pleasure. I hope it's been informative for you. It's been a pleasure for me. I look forward to your company tomorrow from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to about 3. And we can have more fun, more intrigues into the world of our mindset, so we can have the correct mind, the correct thinking, and reorientate ourselves properly, so we can advance ourselves and heal the trauma. We don't need to pass on this trauma to our children anymore, to our generation. Once you can alter it by thinking about the best of yourself. Don't let this little diaspora and Back to Africa group make you think about the worst of everything, to trying to create a hostile environment for you in order for you to get you out of here to go back to Africa. We need to fix our community right here, right now. We ain't going to run nowhere. We ain't running because we ain't done yet. We can't run it somewhere else and have not healed or have not repaired our children and looking to run and go and help somebody else 10,000 miles across the sea. That don't make sense, brethren. So, there's only one thing left for me to say right now. And that is what I always say. And that is, this is Heru saying, I am out.
He said there was only one ad.
One out.
So.
Right,